Morning on the news of another royal development, a major security breach at the London clinic as a member of staff's been accused of snooping on the Princess of Wales's medical records.
Trump hit side at NATO Nigel Farage has sat down with Donald Trump in an exclusive interview.
I'm not going to defend you. If you're not paying your bills, we're not going to defend you. It's very simple.
At 7 o'clock this morning, we're expecting the latest inflation figures, with economists predicting we should be seeing a drop.
A smoke-free generation. Today, the government will introduce a new bill aimed at banning children aged 15 and younger from being sold tobacco products. We'll be talking to the government about that shortly.
I wanted to go. Thank you very much. I was scrupulously polite because I thought it was silly to be too rude at that stage again.
And today marks the 50th anniversary of the failed kidnapping of Princess Anne along the Mall. We'll be looking at that event and how royal security has changed.
And in the sport this morning, Gareth Southgate calls up an 18-year-old to the senior England squad. World Rugby wants lots of rule changes to make the game more popular. And John Rahm has revealed his Champions Dinner menu for the Masters. Hopefully they like a lot of Spanish food.
Bit of a dull and damp one for many of us today. There will be some sunshine for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, and another pretty mild day across the southeast. Join me later for a full forecast.
Well, here's one to get our knickers in a twist about this morning. Another day and what's deemed to be more headache for the royal family. The headlines scream out Kate's medical record security breach. So this has been investigated at the London Clinic. The London Clinic is the hospital where the Princess of Wales underwent her surgery in January. Yeah, hospital bosses are now looking into claims a member of staff was caught trying to access her private medical details. Senior hospital bosses have spoken to Kensington Palace about the potential breach. Joining us now, Royal and Entertainment reporter for the Sunday Mirror, Sarah Robertson. Sarah, morning to you.
Morning, Eamonn. Good morning, Isabel.
Good morning.
Well, Sarah, I look at this and I think, what is the fuss? It's a hospital. Surely anybody is entitled to look at anything.
Well, you say that, Eamonn, but we're talking about the future Queen here, the Princess of Wales. And from the very start, everything surrounding Kate's medical diagnosis has been shrouded in secrecy, which is, as we've seen, is blown out of all proportion this last few weeks, with people wanting to know what's actually wrong with her when she disappeared for so long. But it turns out that a member of staff was caught snooping and trying to access information on the princess. So this shows just how tight they have been in terms of the secrecy surrounding Kate and why she was in hospital, what operation she was having. That there must have been just the smallest, teeniest amount of staff that would have had those details going to hand. So someone somewhere has been trying to find out more information and they were caught doing so, which is actually a criminal offence. So if they were trying to find out that information with which to sell it on and to use in other ways, because at the end of the day, your patient confidentiality, Eamonn, as you know, is to give that away is against the law. You know, doctors take a Hippocratic oath when they pass to become doctors, and to sell that on or to give away someone's private medical information, confidential medical information without their say-so is against the law. Yeah. So it looks like the law could have been broken. Now, Metropolitan Police, as of yet, haven't yet responded to what's gone on. They've not said if they've launched a probe, if they're looking into this, but the palace are aware, as you've reported, and it's a very, very serious breach of trust. And that hospital prides itself on having that level of trust in terms of the high-profile people that come through its doors. Yeah, so the Privacy Watchdog have been informed the Information Commissioner's Office have launched an investigation into this, as you point out, criminal activity.
This is a hospital, though, favoured by, I think it was Prince Philip, who was often treated there. But the King is still having his cancer treatment through the London clinic. So how much of a problem is this for the reputation of the hospital? And do you think that the royals might think twice about using it in the future?
Well, as I just said, yes, of course. You would be worried if it was somewhere that you had chosen because you thought that your information would be sacrosanct and be safe and that no one would be able to access it. You would be very cautious and very alarmed indeed to think that actually this could be falling into the wrong hands. You would question its safety and privacy, and makes you think twice. Do I actually want to go and spend money to go and stay there? So King Charles, I mean, he said he's got cancer, he's fighting cancer. But again, he hasn't said what kind of cancer he's fighting. And it's just very dubious that someone in this clinic is trying to obtain this level of information. And we've also seen a lot of stuff has been coming out in the foreign media about Kate's condition. They've printed allegations that we've never said here. And it makes me wonder, has that come from what's been going on now within the clinic? Has it been a leak from within the clinic?
Do you know more than you have revealed so far, for instance?
I'm not saying any more than what I said on air, Eamonn, I'm afraid. But look, it's been a very, very, very strange few weeks. I was on your colleague Patrick Christie's show last week, and I said the way that this has been handled from the very start by Kensington Palace.
So the very fact that the hospital has approached Kensington Palace, does that mean there is someone out there who is peddling this information?
I would hazard a guess, yes. The fact that the hospital themselves are the ones to alert this shows that we have to take this very, very seriously indeed, and that there has been a serious breach of patient confidentiality involving our Princess of Wales. And that's worrying, especially in the times that we're living in, with misinformation flying around. And we've seen the power of conspiracy theories on the internet, how they can take hold of the wrong information in the wrong hands. Is frightening when it comes to high-level British public figures such as the Prince of Wales.
Sarah, would you recommend that she should come clean about whatever is wrong with her? Because the longer she doesn't, it builds this up into something that it hopefully is not, but it seems to be more serious if she doesn't talk about it.
Well, again, that's what's led, Eamonn, to these conspiracy theories taking hold, because there was just this tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of information given at the beginning, which was that she was having abdominal surgery. And from that moment, the word abdominal surgery, the internet just ran rife with all sorts of craziness. People saying that she was having tummy tucks, facelifts, BBLs. I'm not going to go into what that is. The most ridiculous claims, all the way to the really, really insidious stuff that's been going around to say that she was dead. So this is, and that's why they were asking for proof of life to actually see the Princess of Wales. Well, so this is the level that we've been dealing with. And again, as I said, from the very start, it's been mishandled. The Queen was very reticent. She always said that royal family medical diagnosis should have been made public. King Charles went in and said that he had cancer. And so because he was honest about it, and because Queen Camilla, when she had a hysterectomy, was honest about having a hysterectomy, that's what's led to so much turmoil going on, and just this furore of misinformation flying through the airwaves.
Yeah, and we can all bet our lives, frankly, that the Princess of Wales wanted to keep this private for whatever reason, and the fact that somebody has been snooping at her private records will only add insult to injury in what's already been a very difficult few weeks for Her Majesty. We have to say goodbye to you, Sarah Robertson, for now. Thank you, Royal and Entertainment reporter, The Sunday Mirror. Thanks very much.
Thank you. The time, 6:09. Former American President Donald Trump would keep the United States in NATO if European countries stumped up their fair share of the bills.
Yes, this follows comments that he made last month saying he would encourage Russia to attack any NATO country that failed to meet the alliance's 2% of GDP defence spending target. Let's take a listen to exactly what he said.
Yeah, but the United States should pay its fair share, not everybody else's fair share.
No, fair enough.
I believe the United States was paying 90% of NATO, the cost of NATO. It could be 100%. It was the most unfair thing. And don't forget, it's more important to them than it is to us. We have an ocean in between some problems, okay? We have a nice, big, beautiful ocean. And it's more important for them. They were taking advantage, and they did. They took advantage of us on trade, and they took advantage on
So if they play fair, if they start to play fair, America's there.
Yes, 100%.
And you can watch Nigel Farage's interview in full, Donald Trump. It's on our website. It was shown last night, 7 o'clock on the channel. It's on our website, gbnews.com.
Well, let's get the thoughts of former advisor to the Bank of England and friend, we should point out, of Donald Trump, Roger Gewolb, who joins us in the studio. Good morning to you. Presume you have seen that interview in full.
I did.
And I suppose characteristically bombastic from your friend there?
No, I thought that first of all, Nigel did a splendid job hosting the interview. I think he brought out all the right questions. And I think Donald Trump, as always, I find it quite refreshing, whether I agree with what he's saying or not, that unlike virtually all of our politicians, I'm not listening to spin and waffle. He is a very rough, tough businessman, and he tells you like it is. And I think he answered the questions very openly and honestly last night.
If you look at what the British bookies are predicting in terms of the odds for who's going to win in the autumn, what does that tell us about the likelihoods of seeing a second term of Trump in office?
An awful lot. I always talk about our bookies because they wouldn't still be in business after all these. We've got the best bookies in the world. They wouldn't still be in business after all these hundreds of years if they got it wrong too often, Isabel. And the odds as of last night, I didn't check, I'm so sorry, this morning, but Trump was odds on. That means you get less money than you bet. He's such a favorite. And he was on 10 to 1. So if you bet 11 pounds, you win 10. In other words, you get back 21. And Biden was on 22 to 11. So Trump 10 to 11, Biden 22 to 11, and Michelle Obama 220 to 11. So it's pretty clear. And remember, the bookies always shrink the odds a bit to make money. So they're probably a little bit better than that.
Interesting. OK, so if you were a betting man, you'd be putting your money all on Trump then, in short.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I just don't understand the Democrats, why they can't field somebody better than old Joe, But
if they were trying to field Michelle Obama, under what scenario would you see her appearance?
Well, there was a lot of talk, Eamonn, that she didn't want to. A second tiny factor is that she has absolutely no experience whatsoever.
She hates politics.
I've
read both her books, and she says she absolutely loathes everything about politics and has explicitly said multiple times she would never stand.
Go away. It's like Jeremy Hunt, I'm always saying. Could you walk into any bank in the world with a CV with no financial experience whatsoever and be told, here, go run this country?
She saw how they treated her husband, and she just hated the way they attacked him, and she said that it was just a dirty game.
Well, some people would say he deserved it, but
she didn't like it.
But she didn't like it. So I see her as a very, very unlikely figure, Michelle Obama. And then all the rest of them, Kamala Harris, Robert Kennedy. I mean, there's a whole list of them the bookies have gotten. The odds just go shooting way up.
OK.
Talking about shooting way up, shooting way down. 7 o'clock today, we're going to get the latest inflation figures. What do you think?
I don't think it's terribly relevant one way or the other. I mean, if it goes up a bit and, oh, look at this, we're out of recession, or it goes down a bit, it doesn't really affect our daily lives. What affects us, as I keep banging on about, and this week I have launched quite a big campaign. I want Andrew Bailey, Governor of the Bank of England, and Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, to resign. if they do not lower interest rates and lower taxation. Enough is enough. I mean, heaven forbid that the Bailey-oceros and his thick-skinned friends actually raise interest rates a bit because inflation has increased, when again it's going to be coming from things that have got nothing to do with us three little kids, you know. We didn't make it happen. It's food, it's material, it's hooties. How does raising money and burdening us further help? So, yeah, I think it's really pretty irrelevant if these gents don't stop plowing money into the Tory war chest for huge tax cuts just before the general election. And you know, taking all of our money. People can't live like this.
Yeah, and just to explain, so we're expecting the figures at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
And we've got inflation at 4%.
Yeah.
All the smart money is on it coming down maybe 0.5%.
Yeah.
And the next interest rate decision for the Bank of England is actually... Tomorrow. But that's too soon for them to probably change course. Or do you think they might have taken in all of the...
I think they will wait to see what the Federal Reserve does in America. Bailey, particularly, who never seems to have a mind of his own. I'm sorry, sir, you know, but that's how I feel. He always slavishly follows the Fed, and the situations are totally different. Number one, they have their own energy supply.
Yeah.
And number two, they have a huge amount of money, $1.7 trillion, under the mattress from the pandemic that people are now spending with alacrity. And so that's what's called demand pull inflation, which will be curbed by raising interest rates. Look what happened. It started going up. They raised interest rates. Inflation dropped by more than half like a rock. Here, we have cost push, non-consumer driven inflation. The Bailey-oceros raised rates 14 times.
Yeah.
And he and his friends at the watering hole failed to notice that it had no effect through 14 different rises. I mean, how many football managers would you let onto the pitch, Isabel, to play the 14th match with the same playbook as the previous 13 games they'd lost?
Yeah.
I don't know what power these chaps have got, but we've got two completely unqualified people. My friend Alex Brummer, the city editor of the Mail for decades, said in an exclusive interview with me that Bailey is not an economist and he does not have the intellectual capacity for this role.
It's not just purely down to him, though, is it? I mean, there is a monetary policy committee who make those
full of
interest rate decisions together, which included you once upon a time.
Never. I've never been on the MPC. Never been on the MPC. Even the House of Lords, I'm glad you raised that, even the House of Lords Select Committee on Economic Affairs, only 2 months ago, was in the most silken British language you can imagine, but read between the lines, criticized the Bank of England and Bailey for, one, appalling forecasting and modeling of what's going to happen, two, horrible handling of inflation, three, groupthink, where no diversity, what happened to DEI? No diversity of opinion is allowed, and they've just appointed somebody the other day who is exactly the same.
OK, well, I'm going to forecast you'll be back at 7 o'clock this morning to look at exactly what those figures are. Roger, we look forward to that. For the moment, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Some other stories coming into the newsroom. This is what we've got for you on this Wednesday morning. The USA has warned Gaza's population of 2 million are experiencing severe food insecurity.
Yes, UN agencies have said that North Gaza could face famine by May if there's no pause in fighting and more effort to get more aid in. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was speaking in the Philippines ahead of his 8th trip upcoming to the region since the October the 7th attacks.
100% of the population in Gaza is at severe levels of acute food insecurity. That's the first time an entire population has been so classified.
Vaughan Gething is expected to be officially nominated as the next First Minister of Wales today. The Welsh Labour members chose Mr Gething to be their next party leader on Saturday, succeeding Mark Drakeford, who had held the position since 2018 and stepped down yesterday.
Businesses are implementing diversity and inclusion initiatives without an evidence base, according to a report by the Independent Inclusion at Work panel. That was commissioned by Kemi Badenoch. It found employers want to do the right thing, but are introducing measures without the support of evidence.
Well, after the moorlands around Lancashire and Greater Manchester were ravaged by wildfires 5 years ago, new legal powers have now been imposed to prevent something similar from happening again.
Yes, 3 local councils, alongside the fire service and the police, have worked together to put a public spaces protection order in place ahead of this summer.
Our North West of England reporter, that's Sophie Ripper, has more on this story.
In June of 2018, wildfires broke out across the moorlands of Lancashire and Greater Manchester. Habitats were destroyed, wildlife was killed, nearby communities were rocked.
As I arrived at the scene at the time, you're confronted with a multitude of challenges. Firstly, getting the fire under control, safely deploying people and resources to the incident. We had the support of over 40 partners to extinguish this fire, and it involved literally almost 1,000 appliance movements.
The wildfire on Winter Hill would soon combine with another burning across Saddleworth Moors near Greater Manchester. That was when a major incident was declared. It might be hard to tell on a day like today, but in the summer of 2018, the hot, dry conditions here on Winter Hill meant the flames could spread rapidly. And by the time they were under control, over a fortnight later, an area close to 4,500 acres of moorland had been destroyed. Now, Lancashire Fire and Rescue have partnered with local police, as well as the councils in Bolton, Chorley and Blackburn with Darwen, to introduce new legal measures in an attempt to prevent future wildfires of this scale.
It's a public spaces protection order, and this is for fines for criminal offences, and they will go up to £1,000. And we're talking about fireworks, we're talking about sky lanterns, we're talking about barbecues, we're talking about camp stoves, and we're talking about campfires.
A report in 2020 found that these fires cost more than £20 million and exposed 5 million people to pollution above the recommended level. Thus, it's no surprise these new legal powers have had overwhelming public support.
The public consultation we did here had a really high 90% support for this. People were really concerned that we do something to protect residents, that we protect those businesses, and also to protect our tourism, which is really important for the Bolton economy, and also the standout issue of animals and birds.
As we head into the warmer months, these measures are now actively being enforced, but only time will tell if they can actually stop the fires. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
OK, the time now, 22 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock on this Wednesday morning. Hope your day is going well.
Yes, and we're going to go and check on the weather forecast to find out what your day is going to look like. Here's Alex Deakin.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to our latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Bit of a drab start for most of us today. Dull and damp. The brightest skies are going to be across Northern Ireland and western Scotland, where we should see some lengthy spells of sunshine. Elsewhere, sunshine in short supply. Generally dry and fine across the southeast. It may cheer up here, but a damp start for eastern Scotland, southern Scotland. The rain will tend to ease here through the day, but it stays pretty dank across northern England, particularly Yorkshire, parts of North Wales. The rain on and off, but fairly light. To the south of that, mostly dry and still pretty mild. 18 Celsius is possible with a bit of sunshine. Some sunnier skies across the northwest. A cooler day here with a fresher feel in the cooler air, but still plenty of sunshine, feeling pleasant enough. The rain and drizzle will trickle away from eastern parts of England through this evening. Much of the UK will become dry by midnight, but then after midnight more rain comes into the far northwest. The wind's picking up here as well. Quite a bit of cloud around. Could see some mist and fog where we keep some clearer skies. Temperatures may in rural spots get close to freezing. On to Thursday then, and generally a dry, fine day for England and Wales. A brighter day, certainly to the east of the Pennines compared to today. Still a fair bit of cloud elsewhere, but some bright or sunny spells in the south. Outbreaks of rain will move in across Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day, so a blustery and fairly wet day here. Rain on and off throughout. Again, fairly mild for most of us, with temperatures generally in the teens.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Do you have much contact with wild birds?
I guess. I watch a lot of birds in my garden and actually lots of pheasants at the moment.
But you don't
running
touch
around.
them?
Oh, no, I don't touch them. Not unless my cat brings them in.
The RSPCA, the animal agency, is recommending that we all stay at least 6 feet, that's the sort of length of a human being, away from any bird, particularly pigeons and seagulls, because they spread avian flu as well. And
I have seen a few pigeons looking a bit worse for wear, actually, recently.
They'll have avian flu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really bad.
Or they've been drinking alcohol or something like that.
I don't really like pigeons. Seagulls are beautiful, but I don't even think pigeons have got that on their side.
Seagulls are beautiful.
Well, if you look
Seagulls
at
are flying rats.
No, they're disgusting and attack you, but they are very beautiful to look at. I like pictures of seagulls and things, but...
Couldn't care less. No, couldn't care less. Don't look. I don't ever look at a seagull and think, what a beautiful bird.
Oh, I do.
Wonderful.
Their white feathers are so pristine, even though they're out and about in the dirt
after they
all
poo
the time.
in your car.
No, they're obviously a bit annoying.
They're very annoying.
But they're beautiful.
No. Anyway, stay away from them. That's the warning.
Oh, sad.
Do not stay away from our Great British Giveaway competition, our spring giveaway.
Tech Treats, £12,345 in tax-free cash. It is an amazing prize, and unless you've been hiding under a rock, you should have entered by now. If you haven't, here's all the details of how you can.
There's still time to win our giveaway packed with seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won. Cash to make your bank account bloom. Plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GB-WIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Now, that's good, and this is equally as good. It is 50 years. Now, up next, we're going to be showing you and talking about the attempted kidnapping. Yes, it did happen. The year was 1974. Princess Anne on the Mall, on how she reacted to it in an interview with Michael Parkinson. We'll be playing that after this short break.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debate, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
"50 years ago today, we're going to bring you back in time. 1974 is the year, and another princess faced a security breach.
At this time, an armed man attempted to kidnap Princess Anne near Buckingham Palace after he shot at police and bystanders.
Then broke into her car when she was in the back seat. Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker, this really was shocking at the time, and still shocking. He looks back on events and how the royal family's protection is very different as a result.
This man had a gun, and he shot.
50 years ago, the Mall, famous for its pomp and ceremony, turned into a sinister crime scene. The daughter of Queen Elizabeth II, Princess Anne, and her then-husband, Captain Mark Phillips, were driving back to Buckingham Palace from a charity event. A Ford Escort cut up their royal car, and they were forced to stop. Armed with 2 pistols, assailant Ian Ball got out his car and approached the princess. He shot her protection officer, Inspector James Beaton, who tried to disarm him. Beaton returned fire, but missed before his gun jammed. He was shot twice more as he tried to protect the Queen's only daughter. Di Davies, former head of Royal Protection, thinks police in 1974 were unprepared.
Well, it was totally inadequate. Then the training was very, very different because nobody actually thought anything like this could happen. There was no defensive driving training in those days. What you should have done, somebody pulls at you like that, was to drive through him.
Meanwhile, Ball attempted to kidnap Princess Anne. He demanded a reported £3 million ransom, which he plans to give to the NHS.
Well, he said I had to go with him. I said I didn't think I wanted to go. Thank you very much. I was scrupulously polite because I thought it was silly to be too rude at that stage again.
And chauffeur also tried to help but was shot, as was nearby journalist Brian McConnell. PC Michael Hills, who's been guarding the Queen Mother's residence on the opposite side of the road at Clarence House, also came to help. Ian Ball shot him too, but he managed to call for backup.
When he shot the policeman, we managed to close the door.
You eventually got the door back open again.
He got the door back open, but in the process of getting the door back open, the back of my dress split from top to bottom, all the shoulders went out of it. And that was his most dangerous moment. But
Former boxer Ronnie Russell passed by and realised what was happening. He then punched Ian Ball as hard as he could. There are various accounts of what's happened next, but the end result was that Ian Ball was arrested. Ball pleaded guilty to attempted murder and kidnapping. He was sectioned under the Mental Health Act, having been diagnosed with schizophrenia. Nowadays, police protection officers are highly trained. Miraculously, those who were shot survived, and Princess Anne visited them in hospital. Queen Elizabeth II awarded the George Medal to the boxer who punched Ball. The other heroes that night were also rewarded. Today, the Princess Royal is consistently rated the hardest working member of the royal family. A firm support for her brother, the King, who continues regular cancer treatment. Cameron Walker, GB News.
What a legend she is.
What a story.
What a story, but the way she makes jokes about it all, it just sums her up, really. She's really tough, Princess Anne. And
my 2 colleagues around me here, who are not minor in age at all, but they weren't born or they don't remember this, and this is an amazing story, and I do think this is really worthwhile playing again, to see that whole interview.
It's one of those stories. I'd always known about the famous kidnapping attempt, etc., with Princess Anne, but just to hear that I didn't know the rest of it.
You see how serious it is.
Oh,
You see
my
how
goodness,
it was
I had
harmed.
no idea how serious it was.
Imagine the media frenzy today if that had happened. I mean, considering how crazy everyone's going
over a picture
about the security breach that Princess of Wales has experienced with this hospital note story. Imagine this in today's day and age.
Also, when you talk about how she reacted to it and how funny she was talking about it, let's remember that that was probably only about because she was with Captain Mark Phillips in that interview, so it's probably only about 10 years after it actually happened. So, I mean, it was really serious.
She was scrupulously polite.
Scrupulously, yeah. It's exactly what I would have said as well.
Absolute legend.
Yeah. Your memories, very welcome on that, or your views, or your opinions, very welcome. gbviews@gbnews.com. So, are we going to the break, or are we going with... It is the sport now with you, Paul. So we've got a couple of big Manchester United stories. Gareth Southgate's over a lot of the newspapers today. Eric Ten Hag will be delighted.
I wouldn't put too much into this yet because there's talk about Sir Jim Radcliffe and more interviews that he's done saying about what he's going to do with Manchester United. Eric Ten Hag, he's going to be the manager for some time, but there's always going to be links around Gareth Southgate. He's just been made the bookies' favourite to take over, should that job become available. But it's very easy to be able to do that, isn't it? Thinking, oh, yeah, well, the Euros are coming up, and should England do well at the Euros, maybe it's Manchester United. But is he a successful club manager? Well, would Manchester United fans be happy with him coming in? I don't know.
Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
They got relegated.
It really wasn't so good for him. So he's a good FA man, but whether he come in the Premier League, I don't know. But the main story about a Manchester United player is Kobe Mainoo. Now, he's 18 years old, Manchester United midfielder. I mean, he's been terrific. He came in November. 5 months ago, he was in the Manchester United under-21 team. A year ago, he was called up for the first time for the under-19s. And now he was training with the under-21s yesterday and then got a call saying, we'd like you to come over and join the senior squad. He got a text from Steve Holland, who's Gareth Southgate's number 2. This is how it works. You know, you always think when you get called up for England for the first time, there'll be a man on a white horse, or you'll get a telegram, something, or a big proclamation, but it's not. It's just a text that says, bring your boots, we want to see you at St George's Park. He was already there. So it's a really exciting time for him at 18 to be able to join up with the senior squad. And I hope someone like Ben White, who's decided that he doesn't want to be involved in the England setup, will look at that and think, see what I'm missing. So good luck to him.
No, we won't miss anything with the Masters dinner. So on the night that the Masters is won, there is a dinner at the Augusta National Golf Club.
It's a couple of days before the tournament starts. It's the champions' dinner. So the champion from the year before will then devise a menu. There we are. I was going to go. There's the menu there. Now, this is John Rahm. You might think that maybe there'd be more Saudi Arabian dishes where he's playing these days.
Very Spanish.
It's very Spanish. They always have something very typically that suits them. There's tapas there, as you can see, which looks excellent. This is going to be rather good. There's the Basque ribeye there, or you could have the turbot, or the puff pastry cake with custard and chantilly cream there as the dessert. All the former winners of the Masters that are obviously still alive. Every year they go to the Masters. They will all be there at the Champions Dinner. Sandy Lyle, back in '89, had haggis. Tiger Woods, because he was only 21 back in 1998, went with a selection of McDonald's. You know.
Oh, God.
Yeah, Tiger. Typical Tiger.
There's a nice crab salad, a Basque crab salad.
You know what?
Potato.
If you win yourself the Masters, it could be there.
Could be there.
Danny Willett, you know Danny Willett, who was the English winner, came completely out of the blue, decided to go something very English, and he had, it was mini cottage pies as a starter, and had a proper roast Sunday dinner for everybody. Yorkshire puddings, they're probably, what is this thing I'm eating?
I think I'd prefer this one.
I think so. It looks lovely anyway.
Very fancy.
A couple of weeks to go, the Masters, just a great event. Starts with that. They wear the green jackets, of course, and you remember we talked all about that, but that'll be in a couple of weeks' time.
But we can't eat that. Thank you very much, Paul. Paul will be back serving up his second course, 2027 this morning.
Stay with us. We're going to be taking a look at the papers in just a moment. We've got Renee Hunderkamp and Andy Jones for that, and you are, of course, tuned to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Deep Jones & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Get this right, we all know by now, don't we, that so many NHS workers are abused by people that they're trying to help. We'll all agree that that is pretty damn disgraceful, but what do we do about it? Because now some London hospitals are looking at whether or not they should be able to ban people that do this for a year from those hospital facilities. Is that the way forward? Daniel, do you like this? No abuse, no excuse, that is the campaign?
There's no other choice for most people. It's either the NHS or nothing. And if you're going to take that monopolistic power, then you need, I think, you have responsibilities towards people. You can't cut them off. So there are ways in which, of course, you can bring criminal charges against them. If they commit a criminal offence, that's fine. They might even be locked up in jail. But what you can't do is cut off health services because you're the only supplier.
Well, yes, I think you can cut it off, and you should cut it off. London is very different from everywhere else, and it goes back to a conversation about immigration. The majority of nurses in London are either African or Filipino, and it harks back to their nature and their culture. When you're younger, your parents look after you. When you're older, you look after them. They don't go into homes. So there's a way that a threshold of tolerance they have that is above and beyond most people. So, because I found like when I was younger, most of the nurses were white. Now they work in hospitals in Ascot and Somerset. London is the war zone. I have seen horrific things happen to nurses, and they stay, they show up for work. There's a protection they are owed, beyond owed. And if you abuse something that's offered to you as a part of your citizenship, there should be a penalty for that. For the same reason,
you're obliged to use it. There's no offer involved in the NHS.
But there is an offer, because at the end of the day, like you earn it, you figure out how to get money and go private. So just because you've created something that gives you no, it's easy. If it's
that's
easy,
an impossible solution.
They've created something that's kind and easy and beneficial to all, indeed. But it's a good thing for all. Do not abuse it. That simple.
Just going to get some reaction from Andy Jones and Rennie Honderkamp, Dr. Rennie Honderkamp, about this so-called medical security breach for the Princess of Wales. I'm not at all annoyed by this at all. People work in a hospital. People should be allowed to see records. I don't see what the issue is here at all.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. I'm serious. If I was in a hospital, somebody said to me, Eamonn, so-and-so's been looking up your records, I think, well, they work here, don't they?
Yeah, but Eamonn, you're a high-profile celebrity. If you thought they were going to then sell that private information about you, how would you feel?
Well, I think they have the right. I just can't sit and say you're not allowed to do this if that's their job and that's what they've got access to. So I don't see the issue here.
I think it's a massive issue.
Why?
As a doctor, you have a legal and an ethical responsibility to protect your patient's confidential information. You're briefed very carefully that the only people that should have access to that information are people that need to be involved in that patient's care with the permission of the patient. And that's where it ends. So if somebody who's A, not involved in the care, and B, hasn't got permission to look, is trying to look, they risk being struck off from their medical body if they're a doctor or a nurse, and so they should.
Right, so everybody's now speculating about what is wrong with her and how bad it is and whatever. Should she not just come out and say, this is what's wrong with me, I didn't want to have to tell this, but this is just being unbearable,
No, we're disagreeing this morning. You know what, I think that your medical records are absolutely critically personal to you, and everybody's decision on who knows what about your medical condition is yours and yours alone. Whether you're the Princess of the Wales or the cleaner at the hospital, it doesn't matter. It's up to you who knows. And we don't own her. You know, we might say, oh, taxpayers pay for them. We don't own her. She's a human being, and she is entitled to decide who knows what about her. And we should leave the poor girl alone before we push her to a place that we really would be unhappy about.
OK, well, we're going to pause the paper review and introduce our Minister this morning. Thank you very much. We've got Maria Caulfield. She's a Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Mental Health and Women's Health. And I just want to start, Maria, good morning to you, because I know that you still work actively in healthcare as a nurse, and get your reaction to the story we're just discussing this morning, the news of the alleged invasion of the Princess of Wales's privacy with snooping on her medical records. What do you make of that?
Well, I don't want to comment specifically on her case, Princess of Wales, because it is under investigation, I understand, by the Information Commissioner. But more widely for all patients, you know, it is against the rules to be looking at patients' notes if you're not involved in their care and if you don't have their permission. These are pretty strict rules that have been in place for a long time, and that crosses across all sectors, in hospitals, in communities, settings. And so it's pretty strict rules for a reason, because these are people's confidential notes. And so my nursing regulator, the NMC, would certainly investigate any breaches by nurses. But these are pretty sensitive data for anyone, and that's why those rules are in place.
And of course, this isn't just anyone we're talking about. This is the future Queen. And obviously you don't want to comment on the individual case. But as a principle, you know, are there serious questions, do you think, for this hospital going forward, for the royals to be able to trust it? It's been a favoured hospital for the royal family for many years.
Well, it seems that there's been an instance that they have picked up. They've done the right thing. They've reported it to the Information Commissioner, and so those restrictions and those safeguards are in place, and they seem to have identified a problem and acted on it pretty quickly. But as I said, you know, the Princess of Wales has been pretty candid that she was having surgery and won't be in action till after Easter. I want to respect that and don't really want to speculate on her individual case. But just to reassure patients up and down the country that these rules are in place for everyone, and if there is a breach of those, they will be investigated by the Information Commissioner, and your healthcare regulators will also take action against individuals who breach those rules.
Well, let's talk about the rules under Secretary of State as regards. Can you tell me what is the single biggest entirely preventable cause of ill health, disability and death? What is it?
So it's smoking, and it causes over 80,000 deaths a year, and that's just the individuals it affects. That's without the families and loved ones who lose people from smoking-related illness, whether that's cancer or heart disease. It's entirely preventable, and so the legislation we're bringing forward to Parliament today will, for the first time ever, introduce a smoke-free generation. So anyone who turns 15 this year will never be legally able to buy cigarettes going forward.
An awful statistic.
Not just cigarettes.
Yeah, 80,000 lives in Britain every year are taken because of smoking in some form or other.
That's right, and that's without looking at the additional illnesses that people have that they don't necessarily die from. So we've got respiratory illnesses, things like strokes, even your teeth. You know, smoking has a devastating impact on your gums. It costs the country as a whole about £17 billion a year. So although we make some tax revenue from tobacco products, we actually spend far more on treating the consequences.
It's been a pet project, this, of the Prime Minister, hasn't it? But I put it to you that perhaps on this he might be a bit behind the curve. You speak to any parent of youngsters in secondary school and none of them are smoking. The issue is vaping, and you only have to look at the front of the Times this morning and they're seeing links now between vaping and cancer. Have we been right to push people towards vaping, and do we perhaps need to look at legislating against vaping to protect our young?
Well, the legislation that we're bringing forward does include measures on vaping as well. It's already illegal to sell nicotine-based vaping products to children, but there is a loophole, and manufacturers have created flavoured vapes instead, which don't have nicotine, but we don't necessarily know the safety profile of those vapes either. So in the legislation, we will close that loophole, and so any vaping product will no longer be able to be sold to a child. Flavoured products, the way they're sold, the packaging, where they're displayed in shops. Because you're right, we don't want children to start on a path of vaping. Because our motto is if you don't smoke, don't vape, and children should never vape, because we are not 100% sure about the long-term safety effects of vaping overall.
Very quickly, we're expecting inflation figures out in the next few minutes, widely predicted to come down by something like 0.5%. Is it time for the Bank of England to bring interest rates down as well?
Well, I'm sure the Bank of England will look at the inflation rates today, but this is, you know, if it comes down as predicted, this is good news for ordinary folk up and down the country. It's on top of our cut in national insurance, which is coming through, the increase in the living wage, which will happen, you know, next month, the reduction in the cost of energy bills. So, you know, it's coming together for people. People have had a hard time over the last couple of years, but hopefully our plan is working and people will start to feel that difference in their pockets.
OK, Maria, thank you very much indeed. Maria Caulfield is the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Mental Health. and women's health. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Rendy Honderkamp and Andy Jones joins us now. Renee, any word on smoking? What would you say about smoking?
I think this is the most ridiculous overreach from government that I've ever seen on health.
Why?
Because you're going to have a ridiculous situation where a 55-year-old can't buy cigarettes and a 56-year-old can. It's a nonsense law that other countries that were introducing it, like New Zealand, who were the trendsetters, have now abandoned. Our biggest problem is we were doing very well on smoking. Children were not taking up smoking, but now children are taking up vaping who would not have smoked. So we've actually encouraged them to do something else that we don't know the safety profile of.
Well, she swerved that question, saying it's already illegal for youngsters to vape. But actually, as she pointed out, there are all these flavoured vapes and we don't know the consequences, but new emerging science is showing links to cancer.
So where you would have seen children without cigarettes in their pocket, they now have vapes in their pocket. So we've created a new industry because the tobacco companies know that their money is shifting away from smoking, so they've found a new market.
OK, Andy, have you ever had a cigarette in your pocket? Have you ever been tempted?
Whatever?
Yeah.
There have
Don't
been
worry, Mum's watching.
There have been evenings where I've had a cigarette, but Renee makes the valid point that I believe until very recently smoking was becoming phased out. It was becoming sort of unsexy to smoke, certainly not in and around the office. You weren't smoking in pubs and bars. And now young people, they've been offered pink bubblegum flavoured vapes. I mean, these aren't aimed at gentlemen of the age of myself and Eamonn. These are aimed at teenagers. These are aimed at kids. And actually, if you look at the sales of vapes, they spike at around 4 o'clock till 6 o'clock when kids are coming outside school and colleges. And I think there's a perception that vaping is actually healthy when actually it isn't. You're inhaling in a load of unnatural chemicals that we haven't really properly studied.
Social media, Renee. Young people are becoming less happy than older generations as they suffer, I quote, the equivalent of a midlife crisis.
Yeah. I mean, I've been looking at this for quite a while now because I've got, as you have, Isabel, a young person and I want to think about it. Very good piece last year in The Spectator, Why Are Our Teenagers So Unhappy?, which looked at a massive cohort of data that shows that 30% of US kids are now depressed. Think about that, kids being depressed. 10 to 24-year-old suicides has tripled. It's the equivalent in the US of 9 plane loads of young girls crashing every year. And if that happened, we would no longer allow flying. And we then should look at why this is happening. And there's a really clear correlation that the more time they spend on screens, the more unhappy and lonely they are. So they're communicating with people 24/7, but they're lonely. I said to Andy in the break, it's almost like having a lung condition and going to your doctor about it and your doctor saying it's because you smoke, but you carry on smoking. We know what's doing it.
So we all know what the problem is. The solution's surely impossible, which is to get these youngsters off their phones.
Absolutely. I think the other hideous problem with this is comparison. You know, I grew up in an era without social media and you would compare yourself to other kids in your class, sometimes unfavourably, but they were living a similar experience to you. We're now comparing us, teenagers are comparing themselves to kids the other side of the world, and they're saying, well, we aren't as skinny and as attractive and wealthy and as successful and brilliant as them. And this is sort of 12 and 13-year-olds.
But it's not impossible. You can give your children bricks, don't give them smartphones. And, you know, you would not say when you get to 13, you're old enough to cope with all of these things.
The whole of the internet,
porn, comparisons, the thief of joy, self-harming, all of this, as you say, these tripling of suicides in the 10 to 24 bracket. We have to protect our young people. Why isn't there more unity on this issue?
So
I don't understand.
All of these things come back to parenting. And actually, I'm going to say putting your kid in front of a screen is easy parenting. It's much
lazy
harder.
Parenting.
OK, you said lazy. I said easy. It's much harder to not... We don't give our 5-year-old a phone at all or screen. She gets 20 minutes in the morning before
But, you know, where I'm listening,
work.
and I think the two of you are talking total nonsense, is how do you then take a phone away from a 15-year-old?
Well, you know, it's tough. It's called tough love.
But they will say that everyone else in their class, everyone else in their
parents have to do it together. I really believe if all parents agreed amongst themselves that everybody would do the same thing, then it wouldn't be an issue of peer pressure. Take it away from the kids. I don't know why you would give your child something that will effectively harm them. As you say, 3 plane loads of young girls crashing in the United States every year. We'd ban flying. 9! Oh, my gosh. It's even worse.
And the other thing is the worry that they're importing into their lives. There's teenagers who are watching horrific images round the clock from Gaza, from around the world. They're watching school shootings and things from America where they've been offered live video and things. You know, when I was 13, 14, I wouldn't know any of these things were going on. I was blissfully unaware. And the human brain doesn't stop developing until, obviously, Renee correctly, 21, 25. And you've got these young brains, these blank circuits that have been imprinted with all of this horrifying video and information, and it will have an impact on them.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you think, Andy, then, what we're talking about cigarettes there and how bad it was for previous generations, that at one stage we'll look back and we'll say, and to think they used to give kids mobile phones when they were 10
Yeah, absolutely.
years of age.
I really do think that. I think we're heading for a mental health, big mental health crisis than we are. And, you know, I speak as somebody who doesn't have any kids, but I like your idea of collective parenting, where you say, look, our kids are all friends at the school gate. We're going to say they are not going to have social media, or they're only allowed social media on a home computer, not on their phone, so we can regulate it. And I think you have to have collective ruling and collective parenting.
Right, let's talk about diversity. Kemi Badenoch is saying that diversity has backfired. Andy, what does she mean?
So, a story in the Telegraph, Kemi Badenoch discussing that diversity drive has been counterproductive. She doesn't say let's end all diversity, and diversity is a complete nonsense. She says that the EDI industry, which is the diversity industry of all of these sort of think tanks, people being employed in offices, we spend 500 million a year as a country on EDI initiatives and workers, which is twice as much as any other country. And so she said that a lot of it's given us little tangible impact, a lot of it's increased annoyance and prejudice rather than solving these things.
When you come back, I'd like the both of you to talk about this sign that's at King's Cross railway station, which is celebrating... I don't know what it's celebrating. What is it?
It's Ramadan. It's
Ramadan, that's what we're
hadiths.
into now, yeah. So if that was a Christian quote, would it be acceptable? Should it not just be something from Winnie the Pooh or whatever positive thought? Well, why not? You get more positive thoughts from Winnie the Pooh than anywhere else. Religion is divisive. You put somebody's religion up there, somebody else says, this is not my religion, therefore I'm not...
religion's about tolerance.
...favouring this. No, it's not. Well, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. You know, it's not about tolerance. Religion is very separatist, it has to be said. However, all that and more, we throw it in the box. You have a say with it. gbviews at gbnews.com. Come back and speak to us about it. Good morning, Alex Deakin.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Bit of a drab start for most of us today. Dull and damp. The brightest skies are going to be across Northern Ireland and western Scotland, where we should see some lengthy spells of sunshine. Elsewhere, sunshine in short supply. Generally dry and fine across the southeast. It may cheer up here, but a damp start for eastern Scotland, southern Scotland. The rain will tend to ease here through the day, but it stays pretty dank across northern England, particularly Yorkshire, parts of North Wales. The rain on and off, but fairly light. To the south of that, mostly dry and still pretty mild. 18 Celsius is possible with a bit of sunshine. Some sunnier skies across the northwest. A cooler day here with a fresher feel. We're in the cooler air, but still plenty of sunshine, feeling pleasant enough. The rain and drizzle will trickle away from eastern parts of England through this evening. Much of the UK will become dry by midnight, but then after midnight more rain comes into the far northwest. The wind's picking up here as well. Quite a bit of cloud around. Could see some mist and fog where we keep some clearer skies. Temperatures may in rural spots get close to freezing. On to Thursday then, and generally a dry, fine day for England and Wales. A brighter day, certainly to the east of the Pennines compared to today. Still a fair bit of cloud elsewhere, but some bright or sunny spells in the south. Outbreaks of rain will move in across Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day, so a blustery and fairly wet day here. Rain on and off throughout. Again, fairly mild for most of us, with temperatures generally in the teens.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
there's still time to win our giveaway packed with seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won. Cash to make your bank account bloom. Plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good morning. 7 o'clock, Wednesday, 20th of March. You're tuned into Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
You're very welcome, and leading the news on this hump day. Major royal security breach. The hospital where the Princess of Wales was treated has launched an investigation over claims staff attempted to access private medical records of her.
Trump hits out at NATO. Nigel Farage has sat down with the Donald in an exclusive interview.
I'm not going to defend you. If you're not paying your bills, we're not going to defend you. It's very simple.
And any moment now, we will bring you the latest inflation figures. Economists predicting there could well be a drop in inflation.
UK prices were 4% higher in January compared to January in 2023. What will the February figure be? We'll find out at 7 a.m. Some people think it could go down to 3.5%, a 2.5-year low.
A smoke-free generation. Today, the government will introduce a new bill aimed at banning children aged 15 and younger from being sold tobacco products.
And in sport this morning, it's all in the alliteration. Radcliffe, rugby and Russia. Sir Jim not spending big money on players for Manchester United. Russian athletes being banned from the Olympic opening ceremony. And new rules to make rugby a little more entertaining.
Bit of a dull and damp one for many of us today. There will be some sunshine for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, and another pretty mild day across the southeast. Join me later for a full forecast.
Well, some breaking news to start this hour. In the last few moments, the Office for National Statistics has released the latest inflation figure. And joining us now to give us that figure is Liam Halligan in the studio. And it looks like a bigger than expected drop.
Yeah, this is a drop from... Inflation was 4% in January. That means that during the year to January, prices rose 4%. That's double the Bank of England's 2% target. That headline inflation number, Isabel, is now down to 3.4%, a little bit lower than expected. That's a 2.5-year low. So prices are still going up, but during the year to February, they went up by 3.4%. What does this mean? Well, off the bat, it means that when the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee meets tomorrow, the 9 economists there who set interest rates, they're more likely now to lower interest rates from where they currently are, 5.25%. But I still don't think they're likely enough. I still think interest rates tomorrow will be held at 5.25%. But this number definitely brings forward the day when those interest rates will start to fall.
And do you think the government will be pleased with 3.4%? This is still not in the 2% mark that they set out at the beginning of last year as being their target. So, you know, is this a good news story for the government today?
It is a good news story for the government. Inflation's been at 4% both in December and January. The fall in inflation has come all the way down from 11.1% back in the autumn of 2022. So the fall in inflation has stalled, but now there's lower inflation. That should mean lower interest rates. It means the governments will pay less interest on the debt that they borrow. It means consumer sentiment should improve as mortgage holders have to pay lower payments every month. So this isn't going to suddenly take us to the sunlit uplands of a buoyant economy, a pre-electoral feel-good factor. But certainly if inflation hadn't fallen this morning, then the panic in Downing Street would have become even more intense.
We've been there before, haven't we?
We certainly have.
Thank you very much, Liam. Stay with us. I'm sure we've got plenty more we can get from you.
Yeah, let's get opinions now from a former advisor to the Bank of England, Roger Gewolb, on this one. Roger, 3.4%, a 2.5-year low. What do you think?
Well, I think these are numbers that please economists, but they don't really have much to do with us. I've been saying for over a year and a half since the first interest rate rise that rates should not have been raised because this is unlike the States, this is non-consumer driven inflation. This is caused by food and energy and foreign wars and things over which people like us have no control. The 14 rises that the Bailey-Oceras and his thick-skinned Monetary Policy Committee colleagues who won't listen to anybody have instituted have actually inflamed and prolonged the time.
Well, they're meeting tomorrow. I mean, will they prolong even more?
I think that they might well prolong or they might drop it 0.25%, but they absolutely need to start lowering interest rates because inflation, our non-consumer cost-push inflation, is falling by itself, as it always does. Previous Bank of England administrations have not touched interest rates when we had this kind of inflation. And they have caused tremendous damage to the economy. 500,000 businesses are said to be going to the wall. Mortgage arrears are up by more than 50%.
Yeah.
They have unnecessarily crushed this country, and they need to start to reverse this now. And if they don't, I am saying that both Andrew Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England, and Jeremy Hunt, the chancellor, should resign because they are crushing us with too much taxation and too much interest rate burden.
OK, but just, Liam, I don't know how much of that you heard, but all of this is self-made, according to Roger here. What's your take on that?
I think there's something in what Roger says. There's also lots of global trends going on here. The whole of the Western world has been suffering from high food price inflation, high energy inflation. It's worth saying that electricity prices in the UK have been particularly high. Because of the way we run our electricity market here. That's a big reason why inflation in the States has been much lower than it's been here, and inflation here has been higher than much of the European Union as well. Interesting on food price inflation, which Roger mentioned. Indeed, food price inflation this time last year was up at 19%. So in a single year, prices went up by almost a fifth. And people, you know, going shopping will definitely have noticed that. Food price inflation in January was 8%, but it's now down to 5%. That's, for me, so far, the headline that I've seen. Food price inflation sharply down, still high. If food prices are going up by 5% in a year, we all feel that. But that food price inflation is definitely slowing down now. And I think it's worth saying that UK inflation is now very similar to the States. The last US number for February was 3.2%. We're now at 3.4%. But look, across the Western world, inflation is higher than it should be. This is why interest rates are staying quite high. This is why the economy is feeling squeezed.
There was a scary story yesterday about electricity supply around the country and how we get our electricity from wind farms out in the North Sea and whatever. And literally we will have to put up thousands, and I mean thousands of miles of pylons to establish a new grid of supplying this. So this is going to be billions and billions of pounds onto people's electricity bills for years to come. So no good news there. We'll leave this thought for the moment because we now cross to the Shadow Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. We say good morning to Jonathan Reynolds. And Jonathan, first of all, your reaction to this 2.5-year low of 3.4%.
Yeah, good morning. Well, of course, warmly welcome any fall in inflation, both for what it means for households and for the government finances. That is extremely welcome news. And I think as your programme has already identified, of course, for a lot of people who are watching this morning, tuning into the news, they'll welcome it as I have done, but they'll still point out that times are hard, that food prices are still high, that the tax burden is high, the economy hasn't performed as people would want, and I think we've all got to acknowledge that. But in terms of the piece of information we've got this morning, everyone should welcome falling inflation.
And what about the criticism that you might have heard there of the Bank of England, this idea of groupthink and a failure to have a diversity of opinion? I mean, if we don't see an interest rate drop as a result of this drop in inflation tomorrow, will you share those views?
Well, look, I understand the argument that was put forward there. I've got to say it's not one I can agree with. I think, first of all, I think we will see an interest rate cut. The Bank of England is, of course, independent in that process. I think they'd want to see inflation come down a little bit more because there's a lot of uncertainty still in terms of some of the big events like the Red Sea that might affect that. The argument that the inflationary pressures were external to the country, look, yeah, but how you tackle that in terms of how you tackle the interest rate, the monetary policy the country has, I don't think necessarily, where those pressures come from doesn't get away from the fact you've got to respond to that. Where I would direct my criticism would be towards the government, because as Liam Halligan correctly identified, if you look at some of the reasons we've been so uniquely exposed to high inflation, well, exposure to high fossil fuel prices, the government doubling down on that rather than finding alternatives. A lot of people not back in the labour market after the pandemic because they're waiting for NHS treatment. That's the responsibility of the government. I think even looking at the way the agreement with the European Union was done, where we've got a lot of friction still in terms of food prices and how food and agri-products are transported between here and the European Union, those are the things I think the government should have a look at and been a much greater priority. But look, what we all want to see ultimately is that interest rate coming down, because if you've got to redo your mortgage or you're looking at the government's borrowing costs, that is clearly what will have the biggest effect on that.
Yesterday, Rachel Reeves delivered her keynote speech, and lots of people were commenting that actually what she outlined didn't sound that dissimilar to what our now Prime Minister, when he was Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, said in his May speech in 2022, identifying the 3 key points. I mean, you could even use the idea that you guys have now subscribed to groupthink as well.
Although I'd strongly push back on both points respectively, I would say what you have seen there from Rachel is a very strong argument for why stability and discipline are actually quite exciting when it comes to the public finances, that is the foundation you build all the exciting stuff on in terms of public services funding, people being able to get a mortgage, people being able to have decent and reasonable energy prices. And I think the contrast that Rachel has made there is really with what we've seen, first of all, with people like Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng when they had that mini budget that caused such a big hole in the public finances, but also, to be honest, what we saw at the end of the last budget with Jeremy Hunt, where all of a sudden you have this aspiration, I think he called it an aspiration rather than a commitment, to abolish national employees' national insurance, £46 billion of black hole. We cannot go back to the kind of decision-making we saw with Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, because that is what has caused such a significant problem for households and for the government. And actually, I think that argument for stability is very welcome and in big contrast to the government and how they've behaved over the last 14 years.
But you've upset Unite, haven't you, with all of this? Rachel Reeves very much wed herself to Conservative principles and bring around debt as a proportion of GDP. We've had the General Secretary, Sharon Graham, saying if you stick to phony fiscal rules, rule out taxing the wealthy and pander to the profiteers, you end up in a straitjacket of your own making. These are your big backers.
Well, look, I'd respectfully again say to anyone who doubts what Rachel said, fiscal rules are not phony. If you want to see funding in public services, into infrastructure, into all the things I think we all want to see, the discipline you show is crucially important to that. So let me give you a very tangible example. A few years ago, 2021, we were projected to spend as a country on our national debt, on our interest payments, this year, £29 billion. Actually, what we are spending is £82 billion. So there's been a huge increase in what the government spends there, and for what? For nothing, for servicing the same debt. And the reason for that is, if you behave, as I say, like Liz Truss or Kwasi Kwarteng did, you end up not having the confidence of the people you need to borrow money from, effectively, to finance that national debt. And so discipline doesn't limit your ability to do the good things people want. Discipline gives you the means to deliver on that. And when it comes to people, by the way, saying we shouldn't be focusing on growth, we shouldn't be focusing on a faster economy, well, if people feel that way, they should have loved the last 14 years, because we have, to be frank, had an economy in that time that hasn't, in terms of how productive the economy is per head, seen the growth that we want to see. We've seen it, to be honest, swelled by, in the main, higher immigration, but that isn't a higher level of economy per head, which is the real measure of how successful you're doing. So I'm very, very confident in the argument that Labour and Rachel is putting forward and has put forward in that very substantive lecture last night.
Jonathan, thank you very much indeed. Jonathan Reynolds is the Shadow Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Roger, you were listening to what he had to say there. Anything you'd like to comment on?
Yes, I'm very disappointed to hear the loyal opposition agree with this mistaken Bank of England policy and government that interest rates affect inflation. When I predicted that we should not be raising rates, I also predicted that Messrs. Sunak, Hunt and Bailey would all claim credit for them when they fall, as they always do by themselves. Frankly, since wheat started growing in ancient biblical Egypt, the prices go up and down. How in the world, Mr. Reynolds, you just said it, and I'm going to replay that clip over and over. How in the world can keeping interest rates where they are now and not lowering them and not bringing them down gradually stop Houthis from firing on shipping in the Red Sea? Are you people crazy? Can't you see what's going on and what you've done?
Okay.
Just a final thought from you, Liam, in all of that. I mean, interesting to hear Labour banging on about growth now, really adopting a Tory mantra.
There's a lot of similarities between what Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng were saying and what Rachel Reeves is now saying. There are differences in style, of course. Rachel Reeves isn't going to fire the permanent Secretary of the Treasury when she comes in. She wants to bolster the power of the Treasury. She's trying to convey that she's, very much a safe pair of hands. Just to say, back in the real world, petrol prices, I'm looking at some of the fine print here, petrol prices in February were 3.9% lower than in February 2023. Diesel prices were 11% lower on the year. I think motorists will feel that prices are now easing, though, as Roger says, the Bank of England has been very, very slow to this party to lower interest rates. On the other hand, a lot of GB News viewers and listeners will want interest rates to stay high because there'll be pensioners living on fixed incomes. They haven't got a decent return on their savings for years. So if you've got a mortgage or personal loans, clearly you want the Bank of England to lower interest rates tomorrow. I don't think it will, as I've said. But if you're living on a fixed income, living on your savings, you'll be happy that interest rates are staying high.
OK. Gentlemen, thank you both very much indeed. Much appreciated. So the interest rate's 3.4%. That's a 2.5-year low. The Bank of England will meet tomorrow. Its interest rate committee will meet to discuss where we go from 5.25%. On that. Other stories coming into the newsroom. This is what we've got for you at the time at 7:16.
A major security breach is being investigated at the London Clinic. That's the hospital where the Princess of Wales underwent surgery in January. Hospital bosses are now looking into claims a member of staff was caught trying to access her private medical details. We spoke to Royal Reporter for the Sunday Mirror earlier.
For all patients, it is against the rules to be looking at patients' notes if you're not involved in their care and if you don't have their permission. These are pretty strict rules that have been in place for a long time.
Maria Caulfield there, not a Royal Reporter.
And that's Vaughan Gething. He's expected to be officially nominated as the next First Minister of Wales. That's going to happen today. Welsh Labour members chose him to be their next party leader on Saturday, succeeding Mark Drakeford. Mark Drakeford had held the position for the last 5 years.
Now let us know what you think about this story. Britain's diversity drive has been counterproductive, according to Kemi Badnock. She says a new report by the Independent Inclusion at Work panel called on bosses to take into account the disadvantages faced by the white working classes when shaping diversity schemes.
And see what it's like if you're poking your nose outdoors today. What are you going to be given? Here's Alex Deacon with the weather forecast.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Bit of a drab start for most of us today. Dull and damp. The brightest skies are going to be across Northern Ireland and western Scotland, where we should see some lengthy spells of sunshine. Elsewhere, sunshine in short supply. Generally dry and fine across the southeast. It may cheer up here, but a damp start for eastern Scotland, southern Scotland. The rain will tend to ease here through the day, but it stays pretty dank across northern England, particularly Yorkshire, parts of North Wales. The rain on and off, but fairly light. To the south of that, mostly dry and still pretty mild. 18 Celsius is possible with a bit of sunshine. Some sunnier skies across the northwest. A cooler day here with a fresher feel. We're in the cooler air, but still plenty of sunshine, feeling pleasant enough. The rain and drizzle will trickle away from eastern parts of England through this evening. Much of the UK will become dry by midnight, but then after midnight more rain comes into the far northwest. The wind's picking up here as well. Quite a bit of cloud around. Could see some mist and fog where we keep some clearer skies. Temperatures may in rural spots get close to freezing. On to Thursday then, and generally a dry, fine day for England and Wales. A brighter day, certainly to the east of the Pennines compared to today. Still a fair bit of cloud elsewhere, but some bright or sunny spells in the south. Outbreaks of rain will move in across Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day, so a blustery and fairly wet day here. Rain on and off throughout. Again, fairly mild for most of us, with temperatures generally in the teens.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Before you head out this morning, plenty of time to grab our spring prizes in the Great British Giveaway.
Yes, a shopping spree, a gadget bundle and lots of tax-free cash. Here's how you get involved.
Time is ticking on your chance to win the Great British Giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Didn't quite believe it and still can't. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats, and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Excellent cash giveaway.
Yeah.
And, but would it be the same if you were a police officer? Would you be paid enough?
Yes, we're discussing that next. Stay tuned our way.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
20% of all police officers plan to resign in the next 2 years. Why? Because they don't believe they are being paid enough.
Yeah, there's been a survey by the Police Federation, and they found that around 22% of police officers are unhappy with their pay, and there is extremely low morale.
Now, let's say they, certainly as regards the Met Police, they start on £36,775,000 a year, 36,775. Now, a separate survey found that a fifth of officers skipped meals to save on money. So we're asking this whole question, would you do the job for that money, 36,775?
Yeah, are police officers paid enough? Let's get the views this morning of former Met Police Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville. He thinks police officers are paid enough, but we've also got the views of former police officer and podcaster Oliver Lawrence, who thinks they're not. Well, let's start with you, Mike. Put the case then. 36 grand is enough to put yourself in harm's way, is it?
Of course it is. You don't become a soldier or a nurse or a police officer to make money. You do it to service. Service before self is the Royal British Legion motto, and that's what I've always believed in. My whole family have always served in the armed forces or the police. My daughter is a nurse. My son is a teacher. You do these things for the good of the community. You've got enough money. I don't believe any officer is missing meals and things like that. There's enough. There's also enough overtime and things like that. But when you join the police, the pay isn't a secret. It's there. You know what you're going to get. The trouble is with the police is they're recruiting the wrong people. They're recruiting students and the like. They're not recruiting as many ex-armed forces as they used to do, people who are committed to serving the community. And that's what you should do when you join the police. It's not a matter of money. You should have enough money to survive on, which I believe that amount of money is. But your commitment should be to the public, not yourself.
You know, a lot of what you say makes sense, but a lot of what you say is just rubbish, basically, Mike, because I wouldn't do that job to be faced with the dregs of society day after day after day, the worst face of society, people spitting in my face and insulting me, going to attack me, whatever.
Worse than ever.
And you say that they're not recruiting enough ex-forces or whatever, probably because when people left the forces, they were being paid much more than they're getting when they're joining the police, Mike, no?
Not at all, Eamonn. Not at all, Eamonn. You get less money. You look at the money the private soldier gets, it's probably about half of that. And the facts are, you do it to serve your community, whether people spit in your face or you grip them. Your job is to serve, and that's not a bad thing. And that's where we've turned into a very selfish world where we're more concerned with ourselves than others.
OK, well, Oliver, I mean, those are some pretty strong words there. It's sort of implying that police officers that are thinking of quitting are almost mercenaries, you know, money-grabbing, selfish, but people are saying they're skipping meals. They can't afford to live on it. We all know how expensive the capital is to live in.
Yeah, good morning, Eamonn. Good morning, Isabel. Yeah, we are really in a grave situation. And I take the point, service before self, but sayings like that won't put food on the table. It doesn't keep up with the interest rates that our police officers are facing with their mortgages. They're not immune to the cost of living crisis. And as you quite rightly pointed out, policing is becoming one of the most, if not the most dangerous vocation in this country with the challenges they face. You know, I'm part of many different welfare groups to do with policing in the UK. One of those, Trojan Wellbeing, where we see day in and day out police officers struggling to put food on the table, reaching out for help, not through financial mismanagement. It's just they cannot make ends meet. And if we want to attract quality people into policing, if we want to retain good people in policing, then we've got to pay them appropriately so they don't have to have the stresses and the anxiety of each month having to work out how they're going to pay the bills. If we don't do that, if we don't tackle these issues, retention and recruiting into policing will remain one of the greatest challenges our society faces over the next decade.
Yeah, that word retention that you used there, Oliver, you see, Mike, that's the thing. I mean, I suppose you pay what you pay at the start, but where does it go? And, you know, the terms and conditions, time off, you know, that sort of thing, that's a problem, isn't it, retention?
For me, well, I think the reason we're not retaining people is that the police service went to this model of, oh, we can have people who join and just do 5 years and leave. Whereas what used to happen is people used to join from the armed forces and they do the full 30 years. That's what they intended to do. So that is police mismanagement at the very top. They're recruiting the wrong people. But there are people out there in the security industry and the like who are paid peanuts. And the facts are these, that throughout COVID, where industry was crashing, the police, it's good being in the police because you've got a secure job. I saw people who were idle, lazy, and they always got paid the same money. But so that in the police, it's a secure job and you serve your community. And when you're on, as a PC, you can be on over £40,000. That's not a bad wage considering most people. So I think the honour of serving your community is enough.
Yeah, I don't disagree, a huge honour, but I mean, we had a report, I can't remember who it was from recently, which talked about the level of protests that we're facing in the capital, bringing in forces from around the country, officers here being brought in on time off, it being unsustainable at the level that it's at. That's got to have an impact on morale, doesn't it, Oliver?
It has a huge impact on morale, Isabel. And you look at the sacrifices that not only police officers are making, but their families are making. You know, when you start to look at the hours and the commitment required, you know, policing is not a 9 till 5 job. You know, you've got investigators, homicide detectives working hours and hours and hours to solve some of the biggest challenges London's communities face. And all of those efforts and all of these investigations and all these protests they take part, they take a toll on officer welfare. And yes, policing once upon a time used to be a safe and secure job. But you see, since Theresa May's period of time as in government, we saw significant cuts to police funding. We saw significant cuts in police pensions. It's no longer the attractive job it used to be. So if we're going to attract police officers and people, members of the public, into what was once a fantastic vocation, we've got to look at police remuneration and we've got to pay our police officers appropriately for the environments that they face today.
Gentlemen, thank you both very much indeed. Asking our viewers and listeners, would you do it? Have you done it? Would you do it on that money? How big a factor is money in all of these things? GB Views at GB News.
Just really quickly before we move on, the closest I've ever come to being, actually 2 instances to being a police officer, was once when I was filming a piece to camera as a start-out reporter where I had to try and get a police dog to run at me. And I had to shout, and they were, you know, trying to get this dog revved up, and I had one of those protective things on, and this dog picked me up in its jaws and spun me round, and the more I screamed, the more excited the dog got. It was awful. And I mean, the police officers were all dying laughing, but I remember thinking, to actually be able to deal with a violent criminal, to cope with a dog with teeth like that, not for me. And then I've also done all the kind of training that you do as a journalist, where you go out and you get Molotov cocktails chucked at you and they'd pull your hair. And honestly, I just hated it. So I give full credit to police officers. They put themselves in harm's way. Really difficult job. So they do
like
deserve respect.
An ordinary night out in Belfast, so it does. But there we go. Paul Coit, imagine if he was a police officer. Hey, you'd be the friendly sort.
You'd be the friendly Bobby.
I'd be evening all. I'd be one of those.
Hello,
Dixon
hello.
the Dock Green, that's who I'd be.
Yeah.
What have we here? What have we here, Eamonn? I'll be honestly.
I'd like to be part of a SWAT team.
Yeah, you'd be good at a SWAT team.
Yeah.
Or maybe we could be like in the Sweeney, you and me.
Starsky and Hutch.
I'd like to be in the custody suite where I can, I know they're secure and I can lock them up. That'd be fun.
I'd rather be in a custardy suite.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
I'd prefer to have a suite of custard.
Yeah, indeed. What have you got for us?
Well, I'll tell you what we've got in the sport. I mean, let's face it, rugby can be difficult to understand with rules at the best of times, but there's going to be a few changes as far as that's concerned. And Russia are holding their own version of the Olympics, which they are calling the Friendship Games. The irony is not lost on any of us.
Okay.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, here's Paul to talk about the sport.
Yes.
And there's a lot of Man United news, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe I think, indicating the way he would like to see things going as regards involvement of teams and managers.
Well, it sounds quite exciting every time you hear Sir Jim talk about this. He's talked about the stadium. We're now going to have the greatest stadium in Europe he's turning Old Trafford into. There's rumours about Gareth Southgate. That's not coming from him. But also the other thing...
They'll come from who? Southgate?
Well, no, it's not even come from Southgate. It's rumours. It's mainly actually betting companies that are having... Gareth Southgate is the favourite to be the next manager, but that's easy.
But just if you're a Manchester United fan, is he a favourite amongst you? Let us know what you think about that.
I wonder.
I don't think so.
I don't think many fans of clubs would actually want him to be their manager because of history. But the other thing Sir Jim Ratcliffe has said, he's talking about huge money signings, because Manchester United, of course, spent a lot of money in the past on
Too much money.
Well, that's it.
They pay too much, they sell them for too little, they pay them too much while they're there.
And he's a businessman and he knows how it works.
And they're older, they're at the end of their career.
Casemiro, for example, 70 million, I think he'll be going in the summer. So saying that recruitment now is looking for young players, and this is the way that football's going. All big clubs and all clubs do this now. And I was talking...
But otherwise, what's the point of having an academy if you don't do that?
Correct.
Yeah.
And also looking around Europe, it also makes a difference, you know, with the new EU rules and Brexit, etc., bringing young players over from Europe now, because they can't do that as they used to. But I was talking to a head of football only about a week ago, and it's really interesting what they do, because it's now not just about getting players that are decent, that are good footballers. A lot of it is about personality, because they don't want to bring someone in that's going to be a bad egg, that then won't settle in, that will then destabilise the rest of the side. So what they do is not just look at the player, they also look at the family, and they look at the friends, and they look at the sort of person he is. So that's the way they seem to recruit these days. There's a lot more to it than just he's a good player. If he's a good player and he's not got a good personality, he ain't going to be brought in, because it's not going to work with the rest of the team.
Right, we've had the Six Nations.
Yes.
We're going to look at some revision of rugby rules. What's being talked about here?
A few bits and pieces. World Rugby have said this. There's, you know, the furore over the blue cards in football, but 20-minute red cards is going to be used in rugby. This is what they're talking about. Players sent off. They're saying that 20 minutes, after 20 minutes, he can be replaced. So if a player's sent off, he can be replaced. He can't come back on, but he can be replaced with another one. Lower tackle heights, looking at TMOs, which is the VAR. So there's problems in rugby as well as football as far as video assistant referees. And this is good, the role of water carriers. Now, medics and physios...
You're going to say water cannons.
Well, you'd be surprised. Sometimes they are needed. But water carriers, the people that come on and bring the water to the players, coaches are now coming on, bringing the water on. So, like Razzie Erasmus for South Africa did that.
Bit of coaching.
Having a little coach, there you go. Have a little drop of water. It happened at the weekend. Neil Jenkins from Wales came over. He started having a go at the referee because he pretended to be carrying the water. So they're going to say, right, all this has got to stop, and there's a lot more of that as well. So they just want to make changes to make it a better sport.
I've no issue a manager or a coach being able to pass on instructions at any stage. I don't see why they can't do that during a game. That would just be my opinion on that. But
running on the pitch, though, carrying water and do this and do that.
There'd be a lot of water interruptions, wouldn't there?
Very,
got to
very
try and get the ball in play a bit more, not less.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the Russian games you're talking about now, right?
Well, Russia, firstly, when it comes to the Olympic Games, and when we know what the ban is, and now, as individual athletes, they actually can compete, but not under the Russian flag. Russian and Belarusian athletes, they will not be able to take part in the opening ceremony as independent athletes. They still haven't worked out whether they'll be able to go into the closing ceremony. Why, I don't know. So far, only 12 individual neutral athletes from Russia and 7 from Belarus. But the IOC have slammed the Russian decision to hold something called the Friendship Games. I don't know how many friends they have these days, but there was one in '84, which they did when they decided to boycott the Los Angeles Olympics. So the Friendship Games is probably going to be Russia and probably Belarus.
OK.
And I imagine maybe North Korea, possibly, but I think that's it.
Can only laugh,
Political,
but it's not even funny,
and
is
not
it?
a lot of sport. Well, that's it. That's the irony of the whole thing. That's what they're calling it.
Quick word about players and playing PlayStation.
Oh, yeah, Luciano Spalletti, who is the Italian manager, very unhappy because he says his players aren't getting enough sleep. In the old days, it used to be because they were out on the town, you know, staying up to all hours, coming in with a hangover. These days, the players are coming in completely exhausted because they've got no sleep because they're busy playing PlayStation. And he's saying how ridiculous it is, whereas what they're doing is playing games of what they should be doing professionally on a pitch, pretending to do it, which is stopping them doing it well.
He's banned it, has he?
Yeah, he's banned it. as much as he can, but they're sneaking in PlayStations to have a little game because of the
but even you just have to have a phone and you can play a game.
Yeah,
you
well,
can
Jamie Redknapp's come out, hasn't he, and said you've got to get rid of phones. It's the one thing that's wrecking young players in this country. They're getting on them as their careers are taking off.
Well, it's all very well doing it during the day, but he's saying they're doing it throughout the night, not getting enough sleep.
Awful.
Very important for players.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. See you again, 8:20. Rennie Hunderkamp, Andy Jones, they're going back through the papers. They're going to be doing that right after this.
Mark Dolan Tonight. Weekends from 9 p.m.
I've personally been very torn on whether Prince Harry should have full police protection when he's in the United Kingdom. On the one hand, why should taxpayers fork out for somebody that's left the country and the institution? He is no longer a working, serving royal. But I don't think it matters. He is one of the most famous men in the world, and whether he's a royal or not, he is an ambassador for this country. And he still does good. Charitable causes, the Invictus Games, and he is still a nice and charming guy with a heart. And whilst he has left the royal family and departed these shores, he was and remains the son of King Charles. That is a biological fact. Well, let's hope so. And it wasn't his choice to be born into royalty. It wasn't his choice to be the son of the king. And for that reason, I think he should have equal police protection to his brother William when he is in this country. He couldn't be a more high-profile figure, and unfortunately, like all the royals, Harry will be a target for some very bad people. I fear that if, God forbid, anything happened to him or his family, the authorities would have blood on their hands. So, it's not often that I back Prince Harry, but on this one, he has my support. Look what happened to his poor mum, killed in a Paris tunnel in the 1990s with an allegedly drunk chauffeur. A top royal security insider recently told me that Diana would still be with us today if she had had top royal protection at that time. So let's not make the same mistake twice. Prince Harry needs full protection and the best we've got. Yes, he might be a numpty, but he's our numpty.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Rennie and Andy are back here and they're talking about the stories making the news today. And a big thing, Andy, King's Cross Station today, they've put up this Islamic message on one of its customer information boards, right, which are there to display train times, but I presume if the trains aren't running, they've got nothing else to put on them. So anyway, this is the holiest month for Muslims, the 9th day of Ramadan, and the central London station featured a hadith of the day. Tell us more. And there it is. What does it actually say?
Well, I'll read it for you. It's the hadith of the day, and it says, the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, which peace be upon him, said, and then it has a chapter, a verse, all the sons of Adam are sinners, but the best of the sinners are those who repent often. Which has a sort of repent your sins, isn't it? Which is the sort of thing that all sorts of religious preachers of various faiths say outside train stations around the country. The King's Cross Station has pushed back. Lots of people complain about this. They say, why are we having this rammed down our face? I just want to know whether my train's on time or not. I don't want to know what a religious verse says. Yeah. The King's Cross Station has pushed back and said, well, we put messages throughout the year on all of our boards, whether it's Easter, whether it's Ramadan, whether it's Diwali, whether it's Passover. I've not necessarily seen any messages previously myself, although maybe I've not got my eye on it. But I will also say I'm sick to death of the train companies just constantly giving me messages. Mind how you go, don't run, oh, by the way, it's Ramadan, see it, say it's sorted. And I'm desperate to know whether my train is on time or not. I need to be somewhere, and it's just pop-ups going, oh, on the 29th of April, in sort of 6 weeks' time, the train is going to be delayed for 2 hours because of roadworks.
This idea
I just give me the information I want.
I totally agree with you. This idea of messages, for me, it's football matches, Premier League matches. I can't go to watch a Premier League match without standing still for 2 minutes for some reason or cause, many of which are lovely and sad and goodness knows what, but I'm just there to have a good time that day. I'm not there to think of anything else in the world except my team winning that particular day.
Yeah, I don't have any particular view on whether or not they should promote messages publicly, but when you want your train, all I want, I don't want my brain occupied by anything else.
But also, religion is the most divisive thing on this planet. It is. So as soon as you put up somebody's religion, someone else disagrees with it.
Well,
it's telling you to repent your sins.
I don't think religion is the divisive thing. I think it's human interpretation of it, because that message, how can you disagree with that? There's nothing divisive about it. I think most religious people would say that is...
Isabel,
you're missing the point.
That is so... You're missing the point. It's so naive. When I grew up in Northern Ireland,
that's the people misinterpreting the message.
They're not misinterpreting the message.
Because you talk about an eye for an eye, that's the Old Testament message, the actual Christian message.
They're not misinterpreting, they're interpreting the message as how they see it. It is divisive.
But the Christian message is tolerance and
somebody's religion,
peace.
I'm committing a sin, and somebody else's religion, I am not. It's divisive.
I think the other thing that could be divisive about this is I will be interested to see in a month's time, when it is Passover, whether or not there will be a message for our Jewish members of society, and whether or not there will be people protesting.
Why is everybody on about Muslims and Jewish movement? Why isn't there ever anything Christian?
Well, I agree with that too,
I'm just saying it's a Christian country. Why
no longer a majority Christian country. I think the last census showed Christianity went down by 17% and Islam up 43%.
Yes. But anyway, the point is there's never anything Christian promoted anywhere in a still official Christian
I agree.
country.
And I think that's what we should be doing. You know, we get told that we can't have Christmas, scenes anymore because that might be offensive to someone, but no one cares if this is.
Yeah.
We either do it completely or we don't.
There we go. Maybe there should be left in Speaker's Corner, shouldn't it, if that's what you want?
Well, that's quite
do you agree with
violent.
Andy? Are you fed up being preached at, or are you cool with that? Does it give you a better understanding of everybody else's religious views and things? Let us know.
Renee, let's see if we got a better understanding of Rachel Reeves' financial or fiscal views after her big lecture, as it's called, last night. She's saying we won't repeat the mistakes of New Labour. She's been talking about channeling Thatcher and sounding increasingly like Rishi Sunak circa 2022. What's going on?
It's absolutely bizarre, isn't it? The most successful Labour government in history was New Labour. In power for a very long time, were heralding things like the minimum wage for workers, children's tax credits, in-work tax credits. But now, apparently, that wasn't a good thing to do, which I'm really confused by. Because what they are going to do, I think, because it was word salad, lots of words, not much policy, is they're going to give unions more power, they're going to give the worker more power, and businesses are actually going to be stymied by these new employment laws where nobody's allowed a probation period. You won't be able to fire anybody. We basically are going to end up like France, and that is supposed to drive growth. I just don't see those two things sitting together, because what businesses are going to do is actually draw in and sit back and wait and see how it pans out.
She also talked about not making the mistakes of New Labour, but has said that she's going to take on Gordon Brown's policy of only borrowing to invest, not borrowing just to run a hospital.
I don't know if anybody's told her we're actually right over our credit card limit on borrowing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about hotels for migrants here and what it is costing. I went back to Belfast 3 weeks ago, and there were 17 hotels around Belfast which were taken over and used now solely to house migrants. Solely. Belfast hasn't got 17 hotels to offer up, but that rules out people going out for Sunday lunch or for a snack on a Wednesday night or something like that in all these hotels. And the problem is huge, and no one is really talking about it.
Quite. So one of the government's initiatives to move people out of those hotels was to move them to places like barges or former military bases or places where they weren't on the edge of town or potentially bothering people or there would be conflict with communities. However, according to the front page of The Guardian and elsewhere, Rishi Sunak's plan will cost £46 million more than the current system, a system that, you know, putting migrants in hotels, etc., is supposed to cost us £6 million a day. But these new schemes, plus the Rwanda scheme, are actually costing us more money. And the other position I've got is, yes, people say the Rwanda scheme and yes, putting people on barges, etc., is a deterrent to stop people coming. But it's only a believable deterrent if you're actually sending anyone to Rwanda. And, of course, if you're not sending anyone there and it's clearly not working, then it doesn't work as a deterrent and it doesn't save us any money. And this issue of putting people in barges, you've got the huge issue of converting these places so they're suitable for human habitation, and also they're not saving us any money anyway. And so... is it worth any of the hassle?
But I think we're completely missing the point here. We're calculating the cost of a room in a hotel or on a barge. What we're not factoring into this is the cultural cost of these people coming into small towns and small villages where they are actually changing the culture and the feel of things. Women are scared to walk out at night near these hotels. Shopkeepers and tourists are not going anymore. Shopkeepers are losing money. There's how many of these people are crimes? Are they going into the criminal activity? What are they going to do for the next 20 years? How much are we going to pay in benefits? That's not in that calculation. So, frankly, I don't care how much barges are costing. These people need to be sorted out. We need to be turning boats back, not letting them put foot on our shores in the first place, because culturally there is a major problem here.
Why don't we just sit with a big bus or lorry and every time a boat comes in or whatever, we say, hello, welcome, you're very welcome, here's a bus for you, we're now getting on board that ferry and we're going to Calais. That's where you're going. We're bringing you right across from whence you came. Why don't they just do that?
Yeah, why don't they do that, Eamonn? Or why don't they say, OK, we don't know who you are, we're going to process you quickly, but until that point you're going to be in this locked detention centre where we're going to feed you, keep you warm and safe because you're running away from something you're scared of, until we know who you are and whether or not you have anything to offer this country or whether we have anything to offer you as an asylum seeker.
Yeah, but the situation is so flawed that even when we have processed somebody, gone through all the appeals, gone through all the legal hurdles, they're sat in a plane on the runway ready to go, they still don't leave. We're not in control of the legal side of the situation, we're not in control of the physical flow of people through different countries in our own country, we don't have any control of any element of it.
Why don't we just disobey the legal side?
Well, I don't know. I mean, perhaps we could. There is so many laws already in place. There is so much regulation in place, but there isn't the political will to enforce so much of the changes that would need to take place.
There's also a massive industry around this of lawyers and charities and people who are making fortunes from keeping these people in the country.
Rennie, thank you very much indeed. Andy, thank you. See you guys again in 40 minutes' time. We say good morning to Alex Deacon. Here's the weather.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to our latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Bit of a drab start for most of us today, dull and damp. The brightest skies are going to be across Northern Ireland and western Scotland, where we should see some lengthy spells of sunshine. Elsewhere, sunshine in short supply, generally dry and fine across the southeast. It may cheer up here, but a damp start for eastern Scotland, southern Scotland. The rain will tend to ease here through the day, but it stays pretty dank across northern England, particularly Yorkshire, parts of North Wales. The rain on and off, but fairly light. To the south of that, mostly dry and still pretty mild. 18 Celsius is possible with a bit of sunshine. Some sunnier skies across the northwest. A cooler day here with a fresher feel in the cooler air, but still plenty of sunshine, feeling pleasant enough. The rain and drizzle will trickle away from eastern parts of England through this evening. Much of the UK will become dry by midnight, but then after midnight more rain comes into the far northwest. The wind's picking up here as well. Quite a bit of cloud around. Could see some mist and fog where we keep some clearer skies. Temperatures may in rural spots get close to freezing. On to Thursday then, and generally a dry, fine day for England and Wales. A brighter day, certainly to the east of the Pennines compared to today. Still a fair bit of cloud elsewhere, but some bright or sunny spells in the south. Outbreaks of rain will move in across Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day, so a blustery and fairly wet day here. Rain on and off throughout. Again, fairly mild for most of us, with temperatures generally in the teens.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time is ticking on your chance to win the Great British Giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Didn't quite believe it and still can't. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats, and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GB-WIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Hello, they're very good to see you. The time quickly approaching 8 o'clock. I don't know why we're always coming on 10 seconds before 8 now, but anyway, if you get 2, 1, it's 8 o'clock, and it's Wednesday, the 20th of March.
And you're tuned into Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster, and here's what's leading for us this morning.
A major royal security breach. The hospital where the Princess of Wales was treated has launched an investigation over claims staff attempted to access her medical records, which are private.
Trump hits out at NATO. Nigel Farage has sat down with the president in an exclusive interview.
Defend you. If you're not paying your bills, we're not going to defend you. It's very simple.
Inflation figures are out, with economists talking about the latest drop that there has been.
Inflation is down from 4% during the year to January to 3.4% in February. The cost of living crisis is easing for some, but will it be enough for the Bank of England to cut interest rates tomorrow?
I want you to go. Thank you very much. I was scrupulously polite, because I thought it was silly to be too rude at that stage again.
And today marks the 50th anniversary of the failed kidnapping of Princess Anne along the Mall. We'll be looking back at that event and how security changed as a result.
And in the sport this morning, football, Gareth Southgate calls up 18-year-old to the senior England squad. In rugby, former Wales captain Sam Warburton has hit... Warburton, thank you very much, has hit out on Scotland players.
Is that a bread?
That's it.
Is it?
It's either a bread or a rugby player.
OK, right.
Sometimes both. Italy are not happy with how they were treated in Cardiff, by the way. And in golf, talking of food, John Rahm has revealed his Champions Dinner menu for the Masters. I hope they like tapas and a little bread as well.
Bit of a dull and damp one for many of us today. There will be some sunshine for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, and another pretty mild day across the southeast. Join me later for a full forecast.
Well, more headaches for the royal family. A major security breach being investigated at the London clinic, the hospital where the Princess of Wales underwent her surgery in January.
Hospital bosses there are now looking into claims a member of staff was caught trying to access her private medical details, and they've spoken to Kensington Palace as well about the potential breach.
OK, let's talk about this now with our royal correspondent Cameron Walker, who's in the studio. Cameron, put this in context for us. I mean, people will either fall into the category that this is awful, this is terrible, or it's a hospital, that's what staff do.
Yes, so the London Clinic is the private hospital in central London where the Princess underwent that abdominal surgery. She was there for around 2 weeks. Now, I have contacted the London Clinic this morning. As of yet, they have not responded. But what the Mirror is reporting is at least one member of staff allegedly accessed the Princess of Wales's private medical information. They also say, the Mirror, that bosses have launched a probe into that and have contacted Kensington Palace, informing them of the alleged breach, as well as saying that there would be a full investigation. Now,
So what does that mean? They're informing Kensington Palace that, the private details may well emerge?
Well, quite possibly. I think it was a warning for them. Kensington Palace told me last night that it's a matter for the London Clinic. But this is potentially very serious, Eamonn, because it is a criminal offence to access somebody's private medical details if you're an NHS staffer or indeed private medical staffer as well, without A, the consent of the patient, and B, authorisation from what's called the organisation's data controller, i.e., unless you're directly involved in the Princess's medical treatment, then you should not be accessing that information. Now, these are all allegations.
But is the information not worthless? Because under those conditions, who can publish that?
Well, quite possibly. That is a good point. The first thing I would say is it could just be, if true, a very nosy staffer who just wanted to know because of all the conspiracy theories online blowing up. Or it could be something more sinister, like they were planning to sell it. So, of course, this is just allegation and speculation. Nothing's been confirmed. But they could. There is a potential for somebody to sell that information on.
Karen, it just feels like the world's gone mad, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, here we are with a woman who quite clearly doesn't want to talk about what is wrong with her. This is just insult to injury.
Well, it absolutely is. The Princess of Wales has always maintained and still maintains she wants to recover in the privacy of her own home at Windsor. Clearly, we had the video in the Sun yesterday of her and William at the weekend walking outside of the farm shop. Kensington Palace, I think, perhaps maintained that the Princess wanted privacy, but they weren't perhaps too upset about it because it has seemed to have quashed a vast majority of that conspiracy theories. But then again, we wake up to headlines again this morning about another issue with the Princess of Wales, this time about an alleged breach of her privacy.
But, let's put this into context. I said who published this. Well, apparently the Chinese social media was almost in meltdown last week as they were reporting that the King Charles, was dead.
Yeah, that was the Russian media.
Was it? Yeah. Yeah, so tell us what happened there.
Well, a Russian media organisation put out a fake statement alleging, which is completely false, before I say this, that His Majesty the King had passed away, which was completely false. Both the the British Embassy in Ukraine and Russia both put out a very strong denial. Buckingham Palace did something very similar as well. So it was just complete fabrication. But as you say, Eamonn, it blew up on social media. All this speculation, all these fake statements that swinging around the internet, and it just seems to be hysteria almost, all these royal stories on social media. And the palace clearly do not want to dignify any of it with a response because it is just total nonsense, and yet it does seem to seep into mainstream media now.
But, my friend, we are running a story also today from 50 years ago, Princess Anne. and you've reported on this already this morning, a gunman getting into her car, breaking into her car on the Mall, right? And she does this interview a number of years later on the Michael Parkinson show, and it is absolutely fascinating. And we were just saying today, you compare that, the seriousness of that, to some of the stuff that's going about, speculative stuff. And, I mean, I don't know how we would have dealt with that stuff 50 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, no social media 50 years ago. Perhaps the world has lost its nerve a little bit with all this Princess of Wales conspiracy theories. I have to give the London Clinic a right of reply, by the way. This is them talking to the Mirror. We firmly believe that all our patients, no matter their status, deserve total privacy and confidentiality regarding their medical information. So that's what they told the Mirror last night.
Cameron, thanks very much indeed.
Right. Now, inflation. And the Office for National Statistics has reported it has fallen to 3.4% for February, from 4% in January. And in the last hour, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has responded.
This is the lowest headline rate for 2.5 years, but most encouragingly, food inflation, which was nearly 20% a year ago, is now just 5%. And what this shows is that the plan to bring inflation down, it was over 11% when Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister, now just 3.4%. That plan is working, but we do need to stick to it and see it right the way through.
OK, Liam Halligan, our business and economics editor, what have you got to say to that?
Well, this is the lowest inflation since September 2021. Prices are still rising, but during the year to February, they rose by 3.4% compared to 4% during the year to January, and compared to 11.1% back in the autumn of 2022. So for many of us, the cost of living crisis is easing, and this is mainly because food prices are now rising at a slower rate. They're still going up, but they're rising at a slower rate. Food price inflation in February was down at 4.5%. from 7% the month before, and from up at 19%, the highest in 45 years, this time last year. So there has been a big squeeze, particularly on food. Petrol and diesel prices are also down on the year, though they've ticked up, as many of us drivers will have felt over the last month or so. All eyes now on the Bank of England tomorrow. Will the Monetary Policy Committee cut interest rates from 5.25%? I don't think it will, because inflation is still well above the Bank of England's 2% target. But be in no doubt, this is better news for Rishi Sunak. Had inflation stayed at 4% or come down only a little bit, a lot of Tories in the House of Commons would have said, crikey, the economy's not going to get better. We need to have an election straight away rather than waiting for the autumn. This makes an interest rate cut more likely. It makes an election in the autumn rather than the summer more likely too.
OK, Liam, thanks for explaining that for us this morning. Let's get the reaction this morning to the latest inflation figures from Jack Carson, who joins us from Birmingham this morning. Good morning to you, Jack. Where are you? And what are people saying there about it all?
Well, I'm live here this morning and all throughout the day on Birmingham High Street, getting that reaction to, of course, the latest inflation figures. Initially, people quite happy with the fact that it's gone down to 3.4% in the year to February, feeling like that is quite a significant drop from maybe what we've seen before, certainly in the past few months, where it's only dropped by a few kind of 0.1 or 2 percentage point. But somebody really probably summing it up quite well, that it's good news that inflation is falling, but he just said, I don't really think like I'm feeling it. Of course, food inflation has come down. That is the main one that, of course, impacts people in their everyday lives as they go shopping and getting their food for their families and themselves. So that maybe is better news that food inflation is falling. But of course, it's across the kind of whole last couple of years, that is. But of course, it's still inflation, so it's still going up. It's not deflation. Prices in the shops aren't falling. They are still rising a little bit, mainly over the past kind of year or month. So it's the petrol prices and what people are paying at the pump that is really impacting them. They've gone up once again. People really feeling that impact, because really, as we know from all of the people we've spoken to over the past few months, every penny is counting at the moment. So they're certainly more positive, of course, that inflation is falling, but certainly not people necessarily that cut through of whether they're feeling it in their pockets, not necessarily really much of a driving factor in whether they feel like the government certainly are doing enough at the moment, and they're being people on the street are being supported enough. Of course, Jeremy Hunt very clear today that he says that this is, of course, good for the economy. The UK is moving closer towards that Bank of England target of inflation at 2%. But Rachel Reeves criticising this morning, saying that prices are still high despite this latest fall.
Okay, Jack, with that, thanks very much. As you say, you'll be there throughout the day. We will see you again a little while later on.
The Rwanda immigration bill returns to the Lords today, and it's been revealed that barges and RAF bases cost more to house than hotels for migrants.
The National Audit Office also says only 2 sites are up and running so far, less than half capacity. The government insists it will maintain these sites are cheaper in the long run.
Let's get the thoughts of our Home and Security editor, Mark White, on this one. Mark, good morning to you.
Good morning to you. Yes, the government, Eamonn, just simply can't catch a break with regard to the migration asylum seeker issue. Every day they get battered with fresh negative headlines, and today it's all about the accommodation of these asylum seekers in the more purpose-built centres such as old RAF bases and the BB Stockholm barge in Portland. Remember, of course, that Rishi Sunak last August said he wanted to get away from the over-reliance on hotels, which take these hotels out of commission for communities that rely on these hotels for weddings and other functions in their local area, but instead have been taken over, hundreds of them, by asylum seekers. So he wanted to move away from that model and have more purpose-built centres. But what the National Audit Office is now saying is that that £1.2 billion bill for housing, at the moment about 900 asylum seekers, it'll rise to about 3,000. It's going to be 1.2 billion, 46 million more than if those people were actually still housed in hotels. Now, what the Home Office is saying is actually that the National Audit Office figures are taking the set-up costs for these bases as well. So there's redevelopment costs here. For instance, RAF Wethersfield in Essex and RAF Scampton in Lincolnshire, the original costs of redeveloping these sites were estimated at about 5 million each. They've soared. RAF Wethersfield, £49 million it's now costing, and Scampton is going to cost £27 million. So those costs are being weighed up by the National Audit Office. What the government is saying is actually, in the longer term, it is going to be cheaper. It makes sense that if you put lots of people together in purpose-built accommodation, it's going to be cheaper than paying £8 million a day on all of these hotels across the country. And it is, you know, a pertinent issue as it continues, because just this morning we've got more boats coming across the English Channel. We've got a break in the weather after some pretty dodgy weather in recent days. 90 have arrived in Dover so far this morning. Another 2 boats have just made it into UK waters, so probably about the same number again. And all these people need to be accommodated somewhere.
Indeed. Mark White, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. Let's find out what the weather is going to do on this Wednesday. Alex Deakins, the man with the big picture.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to our latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Bit of a drab start for most of us today. Dull and damp. The brightest skies are going to be across Northern Ireland and western Scotland, where we should see some lengthy spells of sunshine. Elsewhere, sunshine in short supply. Generally dry and fine across the southeast. It may cheer up here, but a damp start for eastern Scotland, southern Scotland. The rain will tend to ease here through the day, but it stays pretty dank across northern England, particularly Yorkshire, parts of North Wales. The rain on and off, but fairly light. To the south of that, mostly dry and still pretty mild. 18 Celsius is possible with a bit of sunshine. Some sunnier skies across the northwest. A cooler day here with a fresher feel in the cooler air, but still plenty of sunshine, feeling pleasant enough. The rain and drizzle will trickle away from eastern parts of England through this evening. Much of the UK will become dry by midnight, but then after midnight more rain comes into the far northwest. The wind's picking up here as well. Quite a bit of cloud around. Could see some mist and fog where we keep some clearer skies. Temperatures may in rural spots get close to freezing. On to Thursday then, and generally a dry, fine day for England and Wales. A brighter day, certainly to the east of the Pennines compared to today. Still a fair bit of cloud elsewhere, but some bright or sunny spells in the south. Outbreaks of rain will move in across Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day, so a blustery and fairly wet day here. Rain on and off throughout. Again, fairly mild for most of us, with temperatures generally in the teens.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, don't miss out on your chance to win our Great British Spring giveaway.
OK, a huge amount of money, plus tech treats. £12,345, £12,345 in tax-free cash. Amazing prize by anyone's standards, and you might be able to win it.
There's still time to win our giveaway packed with seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won. Cash to make your bank account bloom. Plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Now, still to come, it's been 50 years since the attempted kidnap of Princess Anne. I'm smiling because in a moment you'll be hearing her reaction to that, and I have to say, a bit of a legend, to be honest.
Absolutely legend. I'll see it next here on Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 p.m.
I've got an idea. I think that all 30-year-olds should be given £10,000 from the banks of baby boomers. We've got a situation in this country now where millennials are the first generation in modern times expecting to be poorer than their parents. We, as 30-year-olds like me, are half as likely to own a house as people my age 30 years ago. In fact, the cost of a home in Britain, compared to average incomes, has as big a gap today as it did, wait for it, in the 1860s. It is a Dickensian situation.
Now, I'm sorry about the housing crisis for your generation.
You're not, though, are you?
No,
because you're proprofiting from it.
I'm profiting from it. Don't be ridiculous.
The house prices now, compared to that period.
If this is the case, Benjamin,
have incomes gone up that fast?
To penalise and punish the elderly when they have worked all their lives to put into the system and say it's your fault, whingy, whiny, we're going to be envious.
We're being punished.
No, by the politics, so be the change you want to see in the world.
Taxes, I am actually, and I'm about to tell you about the change I want to see in the world.
Are you good? As long as it's not whining about it.
I'm going to stop whining about it, but we are being taken advantage of at the moment to profit, to help the old. Most of taxpayers' money is spent in two departments, the NHS, so the health department, and the Department for Work and Pensions. Those departments disproportionately serve the older population. Now, I've got no issue with that, but let's not pretend that it is not young working people that is paying for the public services for old people. So actually, we are having it hard, and I just look at the future, and we see a future of perpetually higher taxes to pay for this increasing ageing population, a shrinking labour force, and you're here saying we've got nothing to worry about.
The young stop voting for mass immigration parties. The young stop voting for parties that don't build houses.
Immigrants actually pay taxes, pensioners don't.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
24, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Thank you this morning. Most of you believe police officers are underpaid. And as regards inflation, the latest figures, Rowena says, my reaction to this slight fall is, so what? Green taxes are still there. Energy prices are too high. House prices are too high. Immigration, legal and illegal, is still there. And most depressingly, Jeremy Hunt is still there as well. Mel says, these prices are determined by global forces and nothing Jeremy Hunt or his plan will affect those prices, he's saying as well.
We're going to return to royal matters now. We've been discussing a little bit earlier in the programme the security breach for the Princess of Wales. But we want to cast your minds back 50 years ago, because 50 years ago today, what happened?
Princess Anne, there was an attempted kidnap on her. The year was 1974. She was in a car, I think with her husband or her husband-to-be, and there was an attempted hijack by an armed man who shot at bystanders.
Well, our royal correspondent Cameron Walker has been looking back on the events and a really fascinating interview with the Princess Royal and the reaction to this story.
This man had a gun and he shot.
50 years ago, the Mall, famous for its pomp and ceremony, turned into a sinister crime scene. The daughter of Queen Elizabeth II, Princess Anne, and her then-husband, Captain Mark Phillips, were driving back to Buckingham Palace from a charity event. A Ford Escort cut up their royal car, and they were forced to stop. Armed with 2 pistols, assailant Ian Ball got out his car and approached the princess. He shot her protection officer, Inspector James Beaton, who tried to disarm him. Beaton returned fire, but missed before his gun jammed. He was shot twice more as he tried to protect the Queen's only daughter. Di Davies, former head of Royal Protection, thinks police in 1974 were unprepared.
Well, it was totally inadequate. Then the training was very, very different, because nobody actually thought anything like this could happen. There was no defensive driving training in those days. What you should have done, somebody pulls at you like that, was to drive through him.
Meanwhile, Ball attempted to kidnap Princess Anne. He demanded a reported £3 million ransom, which he plans to give to the NHS.
Well, he said I had to go with him. I said I didn't think I wanted to go. Thank you very much. I was scrupulously polite, because I thought it was silly to be too rude at that stage again.
And chauffeur also tried to help, but was shot, as was nearby journalist Brian McConnell. PC Michael Hills, who's been guarding the Queen Mother's residence on the opposite side of the road at Clarence House, also came to help. Ian Ball shot him too, but he managed to call for backup.
When he shot the policeman, we managed to close the door.
You eventually got the door back open again?
He got the door back open, but in the process of getting the door back open, the back of my dress split from top to all the shoulders went out of it. And that was his most dangerous moment.
Former boxer Ronnie Russell passed by and realised what was happening. He then punched Ian Ball as hard as he could. There are various accounts of what's happened next, but the end result was that Ian Ball was arrested. Ball pleaded guilty to attempted murder and kidnapping. He was sectioned under the Mental Health Act, having been diagnosed with schizophrenia. Nowadays, police protection officers are highly trained. Police outriders and backup vehicles are common practice. Miraculously, those who were shot survived, and Princess Anne visited them in hospital.
Queen Elizabeth II awarded the George Medal to the boxer who punched Ball. The other heroes that night were also rewarded. Today, the Princess Royal is consistently rated the hardest working member of the royal family. A firm support for her brother, the King, who continues regular cancer treatment. Cameron Walker, GB News.
Gosh, what a story. What an absolute story.
Be more Princess Anne, that's my motto of the day. She's just so dry, the way she delivers that line. I was scrupulously polite. I suppose you would be in that situation.
You would be. Keep your views coming in. gbviews@gbnews.com. We go to Wales now, and Vaughan Gething is a man who is officially to become the next First Minister of Wales this afternoon, replacing outgoing Minister Mark Drakeford.
Now, Gething beat Jeremy Miles to narrowly win the Welsh Labour leadership election with 51.7% of the vote.
Oh, let's go to GB News political correspondent Catherine Foster, who's there to bring us all the atmosphere and what else is happening today. Catherine, good morning to you.
Bore da, Eamonn and Isabel from the beautiful Cardiff Bay. Yes, the end of an era yesterday as the now former First Minister Mark Drakeford resigned. He made a quite emotional speech. His wife Claire passed away very suddenly last year. Let's just take a little listen to some of that.
For me personally, the last 12 months has been the hardest and the saddest of my life. And people will not see beyond the chamber those small acts of kindness that happen every day from people in every part of this chamber that help someone to get through those very, very difficult times.
The leader of the opposition, Andrew R.T. Davis, was almost in tears as well, paying tribute to Mark Drakeford. Despite their huge political differences, he said how kind he had been to him personally when he had been ill. It was a very civilised affair, but the end of an era, and today history will be made because Vaughan Gething, Mark Drakeford's successor, will become the first black leader in Europe. So a really big moment here. There's going to be a vote, but we know that he will be chosen, and then a letter will be sent to the King. The King will reply, then he will take an oath, and he will take his place as the leader of the government here in the Senedd behind me. Quite a lot of controversy. It was very narrow, a very narrow win for him. And also there's been a lot of questions over a £200,000 donation, which he accepted for his campaign from a company tied to a man who had twice been convicted of environmental offences. Also, he faces a very big in-tray, doctors' strikes, NHS waiting lists, of course, then the hugely controversial 20-mile-an-hour zone that's been introduced in urban areas here, farmers' protests, not to mention, not very far down the road, Port Talbot, the steelworks where the coking ovens are closing months ahead of schedule. So a lot to do here for this incoming First Minister.
Catherine, thank you very much indeed. Paul Coyte up next with what's happening sports-wise.
I have a bit of everything. A little football, I've got a little bit of rugby. And what do you think is the hardest sport to play? I'll tell you very shortly. We'll see.
Home or abroad?
No.
Anywhere in the world?
Anywhere in the world. Out of all the sports, anywhere, what is the hardest one to actually take part in?
Hurling.
Sumo wrestling.
OK. See. Okay. We'll see. Could be.
After this.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, come on, you're talking about this most difficult sport in the whole world.
Yeah,
What
let's
it should
start
be.
there.
Well, give us some options or...
OK. Well, look, it's a survey that's been done, sports difficulty. So the sport, there's marks for endurance, strength, power, speed. I could be talking about you, couldn't I?
Well, does it involve an animal?
No.
No. So
well, what are you thinking, Lion Taming? What are you thinking?
No, I'm thinking of like,
horse riding.
Yeah, eventing
No.
or something. No.
Power, speed, agility, flexibility, which is always gymnastics, and you get 10 out of 10 for gymnastics, flexibility. Nerve, durability, hand-eye coordination, and analytic aptitude.
Yes, maybe on that, what is it called, the beam?
Oh, on the beam you need
yeah.
a bit of agility and all the rest of it. I still think it's some sort of wrestling or combat or...
Correct.
Ah.
No, it's some sort of combat, is right.
OK, but not
Number
wrestling.
one...
Japanese
boxing.
or Chinese or...
It's boxing.
What?
Boxing
Guys.
is the most difficult sport because of everything. If you think how hard it is, that someone's smacking you in the face, the fact you've got to think, it's everything. So they say that across all the criteria that I just gave you is the hardest sport. Second is ice hockey. I'm not sure about that.
Well, no, I think it's the same thing. It's quite violent, and those pucks.
Yeah.
And also you've got to be skating.
Yeah.
It's like hockey, but you've got to be able to skate
playing,
as well. It
doing it all
also
the time.
carries huge
I've
risks.
never found ice hockey an enjoyable thing to watch.
No.
Doesn't...
American sports.
Like most American
Yeah, I
sports.
agree. American sports.
See, the thing is with this, and I think this is an American survey, because they've got American football as number 3. I mean, come on.
Most boring.
Really?
Yeah.
Basketball,
I do like
number
watching
4.
the rah-rah girls on it, though. They're good. They work hard.
The cheerleaders.
They do
The
tick
rah-rah
the
girls.
analytic aptitude as well. Wrestling is there, basketball, martial arts, tennis at 7, gymnastics at 8.
This is definitely... Horse racing's not in there because, I mean, horse riding's the most dangerous thing you can do.
Yeah, but half of it is done with a horse. So if you could have, like, the horse... And then you get half each for the horse or the rider.
You could have a really great horse and then you could put you on it. You wouldn't be able to win. So there is some skill
maybe
involved.
he would. Maybe he would.
Put one of the top jockeys on a really rubbish horse and it would beat you on the really great one. Just saying.
OK, well, we'll just see.
There you go.
Well, maybe we'll just give it a go. And football, proper football, is down as number 10. But apparently they are the most difficult sports. Yeah, it's nonsense. You asked me to tell you. I'm just a piano player. I'm just passing it on.
In there. There's no hockey in there. There's no
ice hockey.
Oh, it does. It goes through. There's a lot of list.
Right, field hockey.
Tiddlywinks is in at 53, by the way.
That is quite tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. Shall I tell you about Kobe Mainoo?
Go on then.
Kobe Mainoo.
So he's the new breakthrough guy this season for Manchester United.
Yeah, 18 years old.
In the midfield.
We were talking about young players coming through. That's what the future of the game is. Yeah. And he's now been signed up. Well, I say signed up. He's been brought through to play for the England senior squad. 5 months ago, he was in the Manchester United under-21 team. A year ago, called up to the under-19s for England. So there he is. He's with the under-21s at St George's Park. Gets a call. Come and see us in reception. You've been called up to join the senior squad. And, of course, he's really, really happy. And it's fantastic news, especially when you hear about Ben White, who's from Arsenal, who said that, I don't want to play for England. It should be the pinnacle of any player to play for their country, and he's taken it the right way. And who knows whether he'll be playing over the next couple of games. So it's good news for him, and he's a good player. And
I think Ben White will regret that.
I think he will regret it. I hope he does regret it, because any player to turn down the country, I think, is, whatever the reason, is going to be a mistake, because you won't get asked back again.
I'm feeling a bit peckish. Can we talk about menus, Masters menus?
Yeah, the Masters is coming up, the Augusta Masters, which is my favourite golf tournament. This is where they have patrons. They don't have spectators, they have patrons. It's just a throwback to olden times.
It's a bit posh.
It is extremely posh. And what they have is the Champions Dinner, which is always a couple of nights before the opening of the tournament. So the champion from the year before gets to choose the menu.
And do they all turn up in green blazers?
Of course they do, yeah. Because you know the green blazer, the green jacket, they're not allowed to take the green jacket away from Augusta. They're only allowed to wear the green jacket if they're the current champion, anywhere they want. But after there's a new champion, they have to keep their green jacket in their own locker at Augusta National, and they're not allowed. They're expected to wear it at the golf course, but not allowed to wear it elsewhere.
Elsewhere.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But anyway, we have the menu, which is John Rahm, very Spanish menu. I know we saw it just there. I think we may see that again. There's a lot of tapas involved. Very Spanish traditional menu. Some of the other menus that I've seen in the past: Scotty Scheffler last year, cheeseburger sliders and mac and cheese.
Come on.
Danny, there we are. There's the menu that they'll be enjoying this year. Danny Willett, the English golfer that won, surprisingly, in 2017. Mini cottage pies starters with a proper roast dinner. Tiger Woods had a McDonald's selection. Sandy Lyle in 89 had haggis. So always something that reflects the person, and that's what's
I had a nice lunch yesterday. I had a chicken and lentil soup, which was very nice, followed by a salmon teriyaki.
Oh, I love salmon teriyaki. Yeah, with some sesame seeds on it.
Yes, and lovely
spring onions.
Vegetables around it, which is really nice.
Was that your stomach rumbling, I heard, as you said that? There was a rumble. Was it you, Isabel?
It might have been mine.
There was a rumble coming from somewhere.
It was so
warm in the
6.5 hours.
Oh, it is so warm. It's just enough.
Have you seen these It's so warm in here. They were down there, weren't they, about 7:30? Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah. Goodness me. I thought it was you that was putting me to sleep. It's not the temperature. Thank you.
It's not. It's my calm, soothing voice. Now, just relax. You're not in tomorrow.
Good night. OK, with that, we'll take a break, and then we're going to look through what's in the papers today. We'll have a bit of an old ding-dong about that. Hopefully you can join us after this.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who talks about... anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kelly J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kelly J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... they're not... Neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting a zip.
Yeah, and also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting a top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible ghastly... Yeah. I mean, this is
she's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far right.
But also,
I mean,
even if she were right-wing, which she isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kelly J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you
well,
if you
no,
say
they
that, will
won't.
they? Because you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, and the unfashionable workplace.
8:43, we are looking at the newspapers this morning in the company of Renee Hunderkamp and Andy Jones. Renee, it sort of pains me to bring Kate up, but actually I want to go to the Star because I think they've nailed it with their headline this morning. World goes mad after woman goes shopping.
100%. I mean, they really have. I mean, this is just the gift that keeps on giving now, isn't it? I actually feel that we should have left her alone. And because of the conspiracy theories online and the pressure she was under, she was forced to issue that photograph, which when I looked at it, I thought, oh, what a lovely photograph. But it turns out that it was photoshopped and whatever else. And now it's just gone crazy. And I can't help but think, Isabel, if the newspapers didn't keep hunting, putting it on the front page, paying people for pictures of women going shopping, this would all just go away.
Well, on that note, should we not talk about it anymore?
Okay.
Shall we move on?
Let's talk about tax, Andy.
Yes.
HMRC is introducing an annual break over the year. And the idea is that you'll have no alternative but to go online and fill in your own tax returns, which leads to problems, of course, because sometimes people don't get it right. And
then they might be prosecuted and all sorts of things. And sorry to interrupt, it's quite the break too. It's not like a couple of days the tax office won't be answering your calls. They're talking about from April the 8th to September the 30th, taxpayers will be unable to call the tax office for help with their tax return. They're trying to drive you online.
Why bring it back at all? If you're going to break April, May, June, July, August, the 6 months of the year.
Yeah, quite. It's
not they're coming back.
Well, you've got to consider these poor people who are working from home from HMRC. They do need to go on holiday as well, Eamonn. You know?
It's like when I get through to my bank, they seem affronted if I've called and they say, can we ask you why you didn't go online? Because I wanted to speak to a human being, heaven forbid.
They don't get that.
I've been self-employed 15 years. HMRC's website is absolutely appalling. If you try and pay a bill to HMRC, there is no massive blob on the website that says pay your bill here or find out how much you owe, like you do with, say, British Gas or Severn Trent Water or whatever. Instead, you have to granularly go through tiny text that's almost Bible-sized font to try and find anything. You have to log in 2 or 3 times. It sends you questionnaires. I just want to know how much I have to pay, what is my bill? And it's drowning in superfluous, dreadful information. Every time I log in, it asks me if I'm disabled. Well, it's my login. Why do I wasn't disabled this month. I'm not going to be, largely speaking, I would personally change the information myself. It's so much extraneous information. I find it stressful, and I'm really computer literate and digitally literate. If you were a pensioner, or if you were less able-bodied, or you were a single mum with lots of kids in the background, all this sort of stuff, it's an absolute nightmare. And for them to disappear and say they're not offering any phone service for 6 months, what someone's saying they might prosecute you if your tax affairs aren't correct, it's a trap and it's wrong.
Let's talk about cyber flashing. Cyber flashing is men who send awful nude pictures of themselves. In this particular case, it was a guy who sent, his name's Nicholas Hawkes, and he sent unsolicited, explicit photos to a 15-year-old and a woman, and as a result, he's been put away for 66 weeks.
Good, and not a minute too soon. We know that this kind of crime, however innocuous it may seem, is actually quite often an entry crime to other more serious sexual crimes. Wayne Couzens started with flashing and ended up murdering a girl. And Sarah Everard, let me say her name, not a girl. And I think it's brilliant that this has happened. I think it's brilliant that it's out there so that other people who think that this may be OK and they can do it, don't do it because they're deterred. But we also need to make sure now that we're actually giving people who commit sexual crimes decent sentences so that it is a deterrent. You know, it's still going on day in, day out. Women are still scared to walk the streets, and this is just part of it.
It's worth saying, and I absolutely applaud that message, but it's worth saying that whilst we are saying that this guy's been sent to prison for sending nude images of himself, he's actually got a storied history of various other offences.
Yes, which
he's
the
not
judge
just
didn't believe.
Yes.
As to why he did it. But here's the point. You just used the term, which really surprised me, Doctor. You said, however, innocuous. Now, if I took...
No, I said it may seem innocuous.
Well, I don't think it's innocuous, nor should it be seen to be seemingly innocuous. If I took a picture of my genitalia and decided to send it to you, I mean, you've seen everything anyway, but...
not literally on Eamonn, but yeah, in your role as a doc.
But, you know, why should I get any gratification out of that? Why should I be so, at its very basis form, so rude, so intrusive into your life? And I think there are two groups of men who feel that this is innocuous and that they can do this, and men who would never in a million years think of doing this.
And that's the same with everything, isn't it? Men who think rape is innocuous and something that is their right, and men who don't. The majority of men do not think this is OK, do not think rape is OK. But unfortunately, there are plenty who don't. And we need to be able to find them, expose them and put them in prison.
I'm sure you've been flashed in your lifetime. I mean, as a schoolgirl, I was flashed at least twice, and we're talking about innocuous, and we just giggled about it at the time, and we never reported it. And as an adult, I now know I should have done something about it, and I feel bad about that, because God knows what they went on to do at a later stage. But that's what I think you mean by innocuous, is that, you know, it's not necessarily seen as having touched anyone or assaulted or...
Harmless. People think it's harmless because it's only a picture. It isn't harmless because, A, you are actually possibly traumatising a 15-year-old girl or a woman, whoever you send it to, but B, it may just be a litany of where else you're going with sexual crimes.
Sure, and also with a digital crime like that, it leaves an indelible digital trace that police can follow. And also it reduces the burden of a victim having to then stand up in court and say, well, this happened and this happened and this happened. Well, you've got the image. I don't know this person sent this unwanted image. It should be an easy crime to prosecute.
Doctor, why do women feel less inclined, if at all, to do the same sort of thing?
Oh, I wish I think that testosterone has a part to play in this, and I think we need to accept that men and women are intrinsically different because of that difference in hormones. And I think it's quite an aggressive act. It's a hunting act, isn't it? It comes with that male macho thing. So I'm not saying that women don't do this, because I'm sure there are examples of where they do, but men certainly seem to be more sexually predatory in the way that they approach things.
I just wonder, though, if prisons are rigged to take such offenders, and what form of tokenism this sentencing was yesterday, because if there are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of men who do this, are they all going to end up in jail? I suspect not.
No, but I suppose punishment isn't just sort of a prison sentence, is it? I mean, having your collar felt, being dragged in front of the court, having this guy on your record.
Photograph is in every paper today.
I mean, that is a deterrent, isn't it? And I think that removing the veil of secrecy of this sort of behaviour, where somebody can send their private parts to thousands of women and get away with it. Is
maybe some men will think twice now before they do that, and that's a win, isn't it?
Yeah. The BBC may be ruling out adverts for the first time in the UK, Andy.
So, yeah, as part of the BBC's licence, we pay for the licence so they don't have any advertising on. But the BBC Sounds, their sort of secondary products that are then released on Apple and Spotify, they're going to allow paid-for adverts on these products. And that could lead to, when you're listening to The Archers, for instance, on a secondary platform, having suddenly an advert for a commercial product. Now, you might think that's a small thing, but if you are a small producer who's already producing products against this huge tide of BBC material, and indeed companies like GB News who have to have paid for adverts, this seems like a doubly unfair advantage. If the BBC you have to legally pay a TV licence just to consume any broadcast content, for the BBC to then say, oh, well, we're going to have advertising money as well, is grossly unfair. And yes, I admire and like a lot of BBC content, and I'm proud to have worked on various different BBC products. But if you try and Google anything, the first 2, 3, 4 pages that come up are all BBC products, whether it's an apple pie recipe or a weather report. And the BBC bleeding into all these areas which aren't really public service broadcasting already, and then to charge advertising for it on top of it is killing so much independent content and so much competition.
There then are these options that you can pay extra money online or on streaming to avoid adverts. And I think people have found ways to avoid.
Do you? I don't do it.
I don't love an advert, but I do come from a company that needs adverts, so I understand their role.
Yeah, so I don't pay to avoid them.
No, I haven't paid to avoid them, but I can understand why people find them irritating.
So there are some stations I will watch that have... So for Amazon Prime, for example, has adverts now. So I pay for my Prime, but now I have to watch ads as well. But I think I can upgrade to lose the ads if I want to, but I don't take the second option. Do I watch
because
the ads?
You're being tight, or because you want to support?
Because I'm being tight.
You want to support Amazon. They're really struggling.
But also, if you watch something on playback, you can fast forward through the adverts as well.
Not necessarily.
Not always, no.
On some products.
You can do it a couple of times, can't you? And then they give you the whole
They
raft.
block you.
Yeah.
I think ITVX, I don't think you can.
You can't, nor Sky.
Through, or Sky, you can't do it.
Yeah, but equally, if BBC start taking advertising on their products, they're going to take all the advertising money from other smaller independent producers and they're going to disappear. And we're going to have one set of political views, one publisher producing so much content. It's not fair.
Quick word, Renee, about seagulls, birds and pigeons.
Well, this is a little bit funny and a little bit not. It's another scare story that if we go near a seagull, we might get swine flu, which is a load of tosh.
Avian flu, surely.
Sorry. Oh, yes, thank you. It's H1N1. Avian flu. Avian flu.
She's not a vet.
There has been one farmer in the entire world in China who has died from catching something from a bird. It's a nonsense, and I'm tired of this scaring people about what they might catch. Go about your lives, stroke a seagull if you want, but take the advice in the story. Do not bring them into your home.
Have you ever tried stroking a seagull?
Who on earth would ever stroke a seagull? This is fine.
Yeah. And the advice is don't stroke a seagull and don't invite a seagull into your home. I mean, I don't know about you, I'm always inviting seagulls into my house. They're great party guests, brilliant at charades.
Huge.
Such a shame I can't bring them in the house.
Scary,
yeah. Flying rats. That's what they're
horrible.
You can spread it. You might not contract it yourself or die, but you could spread it if you come into contact with
Well, no, allegedly not, because you're not going to contract it. So if you don't
get it on the
contract
feet of your shoes or something, I don't know. There must be some risk getting too close to a dying pigeon or whatever.
Andy, thank you.
You've been delightful.
Thanks
both very much.
Informative and educational today. Thank you both.
As will Alex Deakin. He's got your forecast. Here's what's in store.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Bit of a drab start for most of us today. Dull and damp. The brightest skies are going to be across Northern Ireland and western Scotland, where we should see some lengthy spells of sunshine. Elsewhere, sunshine in short supply. Generally dry and fine across the southeast. It may cheer up here, but a damp start for eastern Scotland, southern Scotland. The rain will tend to ease here through the day, but it stays pretty dank across northern England, particularly Yorkshire, parts of North Wales. The rain on and off, but fairly light. To the south of that, mostly dry and still pretty mild. 18 Celsius is possible with a bit of sunshine. Some sunnier skies across the northwest. A cooler day here with a fresher feel. We're in the cooler air, but still plenty of sunshine, feeling pleasant enough. The rain and drizzle will trickle away from eastern parts of England through this evening. Much of the UK will become dry by midnight, but then after midnight more rain comes into the far northwest. The wind's picking up here as well. Quite a bit of cloud around. Could see some mist and fog where we keep some clearer skies. Temperatures may in rural spots get close to freezing. On to Thursday then, and generally a dry, fine day for England and Wales. A brighter day, certainly to the east of the Pennines compared to today. Still a fair bit of cloud elsewhere, but some bright or sunny spells in the south. Outbreaks of rain will move in across Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day, so a blustery and fairly wet day here. Rain on and off throughout. Again, fairly mild for most of us, with temperatures generally in the teens.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's still time to win our giveaway packed with seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won. Cash to make your bank account bloom. Plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, I'm sure you have seen this video that went viral this week, and if you haven't, well, I think you're going to enjoy it. This is a firefighter leaning on a fence whilst watching a trapped driving instructor's car sink in 4 feet of floodwater. Looks very comfortable there, doesn't he? Just leaning against the fence.
Just chilling, just relaxing. Yeah, there were there were in fact two Essex fire and rescue crews, an ambulance and a police car parked near the sinking vehicle, but they wouldn't enter the water because they had to wait for specialist crews who were trained for the water depth.
Well, two people who weren't going to sit back and watch were these two, Jack and Danielle Price, who took it upon themselves to rescue the submerged driver. And Danielle joins us now. Very good morning to you, Danielle, and you are a hero, an absolute hero. What happened in this video? Make sense of it for us.
So we were filming in the area for our YouTube channel, and we've seen the fire brigade come through. I was actually out at 5 o'clock in the morning with my husband, Jamie. We know it always happens there, as you can see, and it was clear. We've seen the fire brigade come through, we've followed them, and they're just standing around as if nothing's happened. In the clip, it says he's fine, he's on his phone, and then sort of walked away. But what they failed to realise is when my partner actually opened the door, as you can hear, he's on the phone to the emergency crew in panic, thinking he's going to sink. So we could not just sit there and watch. He's absolutely terrified.
Yeah, poor bloke. Well done you. Do you reckon this is health and safety gone mad?
It is, because although I do sympathise with them, they are so red-taped, but surely sort of common sense has to kick in as open the door.
Good morning. It is 9 o'clock on Wednesday, the 20th of March. You're tuned in to Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Thanks for your company. Thank you for tuning in. And a major royal security breach. The hospital where the Princess of Wales was treated has launched an investigation over claims staff attempted to access her private medical records. The latest on that in a moment.
We're going to be talking about the London clinic, of course, an alleged data breach, and the Princess of Wales Kensington Palace not commenting.
Trump hits out at NATO. Nigel Farage has sat down with Donald Trump in an exclusive interview.
I'm not going to defend you. If you're not paying your bills, we're not going to defend you. It's very simple.
Inflation has fallen this morning, more than expected, 3.4%.
And what this shows is that the plan to bring inflation down, it was over 11% when Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister, now just 3.4%. That plan is working, but we do need to stick to it and see it right the way through.
A smoke-free generation. Today, the government will introduce a new bill aimed at banning children aged 15 and younger from being sold tobacco products. Earlier, we spoke to the government about this.
I wanted to go. Thank you very much. I was scrupulously polite because I thought it was silly to be too rude at that stage again.
50 years since that interview was broadcast. It was a failed kidnapping of Princess Anne in the Mall in London. We'll be looking at that event and how royal security has changed as a result.
Bit of a dull and damp one for many of us today. There will be some sunshine for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, and another pretty mild day across the southeast. Join me later for a full forecast.
Now, a big royal story today. A major security breach has been reported and is being investigated at the London clinic. That's the hospital where the Princess of Wales underwent surgery back in January.
Executives there have now been looking into claims a member of staff was caught trying to access the Princess's private medical details. Senior hospital bosses have spoken to Kensington Palace about the breach.
Well, joining us now is GB News' royal correspondent Cameron Walker, which, I mean, you've been covering what has got to be described as this unprecedented period for the royal family of interest. Latest twist in this, insult to injury when Kate's trying to privately recover from something. What's the latest?
Absolutely. There's been so much hysteria over the last couple of weeks online, particularly conspiracy theories around the Princess's health. We know she went into the London clinic in January, a private hospital in central London, to have planned abdominal surgery. This is the clinic which is trusted by members of the royal family, politicians, celebrities, for being discreet with private medical information. The Mirror this morning is reporting that at least one member of staff allegedly tried to access the Princess of Wales's private medical information. Now, I have contacted the London clinic this morning. As of yet, we have received no response. The Information Commissioner's Office has indeed responded to us, and they said that we can confirm that we have received a breach report and are assessing the information provided. Now, Kensington Palace says this is a matter for the London clinic, but it could be very serious, because accessing someone's medical information without consent of the patient or indeed authorisation from the hospital is potentially a criminal offence. Basically, only medical staff who are directly involved in the Princess's treatment should be able to access it. So it could be particularly serious for them. But as I said, the London clinic not responded as of yet.
This could go a number of ways. I mean, certainly one of two ways. She either says stum, doesn't say anything, or she comes out and says, look, guys, this has now got ridiculous. Quite simply, this is the operation I had. This is why I didn't want to talk about it. I hope you understand, and now will you just clear off and leave me alone?
I can imagine the Princess is going to maintain a dignified silence on this one. We know that she wants to recover in private. Yes, we saw a couple of paparazzi pictures in that video taken by a member of the public of her and William at the Windsor Farm Shop. If the Princess does decide to disclose any more information, it's going to be on her her terms, and I think it's going to be back when she's back on public duties.
And Cameron, you've been out with the Prince of Wales this week, and he's very much been the front of the Express saying, focusing on driving forwards, not on all of these rumours, which, quite frankly, have gone mainstream, haven't they? You know, rational, sensible people talking about all these crazy theories. Is he going to be able to do that? I mean, he was asked questions, and I think Kate came up yesterday when he was in Sheffield. You know, can he do what he wants to do and keep calm and carry on?
He did. I mean, Prince William, he wasn't prompted to talk about Kate. He brought her up himself. Someone was talking about early childhood and said, well, actually, that's my wife's area. She should be sat here next to me. But Prince William, as he said, very much focused on his work with homelessness and trying to prevent it in 6 flagship locations across the country. But inevitably, the headlines were all on the princess. And I think I can imagine they're getting a little bit frustrated that this hysteria online is consistently overshadowing the work that they do. But of course, we don't have long to wait until Easter Sunday. We don't have long to wait until after Easter, which is when Kensington Palace said the princess would be back on public duties. And I suspect they are really hoping when the princess is back on public duties, several independent cameras have filmed her, the speculation will die down.
OK. Cameron, thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to date. Appreciate it. The time, 9:05. To Wales now. Vaughan Gething is a gentleman who will officially become the next First Minister of Wales. That will happen today.
Yeah, and he's replacing Mark Drakeford. Gething beat Jeremy Miles to narrowly win the Welsh Labour leadership election. He got 51.7% of the vote.
Let's now go to our political correspondent, Catherine Foster, who's there in Cardiff Bay, and she'll tell us more about what to expect today. Good morning, Catherine.
Borodar, Eamonn and Isabel from Cardiff Bay. Hope you like my one word of Welsh. So, former First Minister Mark Drakeford resigned yesterday, gave a really quite emotional resignation speech. Let's just have a little look at that first.
For me, personally, the last 12 months has been the hardest and the saddest of my life. And people will not see beyond the chamber those small acts of kindness that happen every day from people in every part of this chamber that help someone to get through those very, very difficult times.
LBC, Sky, BBC.
So, the end of an era. Mark Drakeford was First Minister here, of course, for 5 years. Through the COVID years, Wales had the most strict restrictions of any corner of the United Kingdom. But a new chapter today with Vaughan Gething, former Health Minister and Economy Minister, taking up the position. There will be a vote after 3 o'clock this afternoon. A letter will be sent to the King. The appointment will be made official. There will be an oath. He's got a very big in-tray of pressing issues to deal with. But let's talk now to Sam Rowlands. He is MS for North Wales. Thank you very much for talking to us on GB News today. Vaughan Gething will be the first black leader of any country in Europe. This is quite a moment for Wales and the UK more broadly, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really important day for Wales and, as you say, for the UK more broadly. But I did hear in your introduction about a change of an era, change of the guard perhaps here in Welsh Government. That simply isn't the truth. Vaughan Gething's been part of at least some machination of government here in Wales for at least the last decade. He's had responsibility to stay around health and sadly seen some of the worst figures in terms of COVID deaths during his time as health minister here and more recently as the minister for the economy. And sadly for me here in Wales, Wales is in the worst position in the UK when it comes to the economy. So more of the same Labour by the looks of it.
Many of these matters, as you say, are devolved to Wales, but one thing that isn't is industrial policy and the steelworks at Port Talbot. There's going to be thousands of job losses as a result of policies made in Westminster by a Conservative government. Is it any wonder that Conservatives are struggling in Wales and around the country?
It's a really difficult time for those workers in Port Talbot at the moment. I've been really pleased that the UK government have stumped up £500 million worth of cash to support the investment at the site there, and also £100 million worth of money to support people transitioning from one job to the next. What we haven't seen from the Welsh government here, who do have responsibility around the economy here in Wales. We have not seen a penny come from them to support those hard workers there in Port Talbot. So we need to see Welsh Government stepping up to the plate, as we've seen UK Government do so at the moment.
The £200,000 that Vaughan Gething accepted to his campaign by a man who had convictions for environmental offences, do you think that money should be being given back?
That's a matter for Vaughan Gething and the Labour Party. There's lots of disquiet amongst members of the Senedd here, particularly within the Labour Party at the moment. I'm aware that even on Monday evening, around 14 of them met in a meeting here in the Senedd because of that disquiet amongst the group. That's a matter for the Labour Party to deal with amongst themselves and question themselves in terms of how they run their leadership campaigns.
Of course, there's also a lot of disquiet, isn't there, in Westminster over Frank Hester and the 10 million. But thank you very much for talking to us on GB News this morning. So back to you now from Cardiff Bay. A very big day in Wales and history being made.
Thank you, Catherine. To those of you who maybe might be trying to get your breakfast online today, Isabel's got an update.
Yeah, breaking news. Greggs, the bakery company, I suppose you could describe them as, is reporting this morning that they are having significant problems at their tills, forcing them to close their doors in stores up and down the country. You'll be aware that there have been a series of these sorts of glitches, usually at sort of food outlets. It seems to be Tesco's, Sainsbury's as well. If you've been affected, we would love to hear from you, not just on breakfast, but of course on Britain's Newsroom, which follows us at 9:30. Get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.com. What is going on here? I think McDonald's is another one that's also recently... McDonald's has also recently had one of these.
I suppose this should be what's called not breaking news, but baking news.
Ah, very good.
That's
why they pay you the big bucks.
There we go. Right, well, keeping right across that, Andrew and Bev from 9:30. Good morning, guys.
This is a calamity. I go to Greggs at Westminster Station,
Tube
Station.
I do.
Not.
I
do.
Ridiculous. You've never eaten and you buy a coffee without milk in it, probably.
I don't buy the tea and coffee, but they do a very nice vegan sausage roll.
Yeah.
Oh, he's winding us up.
No, I do.
Just like vegans or sausage rolls.
And you see quite a lot of politicians in there. You do.
I have heard the Westminster one is closed. I can confirm the Westminster one is closed. So it is. This is, this is the heart of Britain, Greggs.
I'm suspicious about this. So McDonald's, Sainsbury's, Tesco's at the same time. Now, Greggs, is this the Russians?
Well, he's turning into a conspiracy theorist.
No, we leave that to you, Bev.
You know what? We had a guy on the show last week about this, and he said a lot of these software systems get updated by the same companies around about the same time, and that might explain these glitches.
Still odd, though, isn't it?
Very odd. Look at this role reversal. You with your, facts and explanations, and you with the conspiracy theories.
You just have to, the thing is, look, we're in the middle of massive social change, and a big part of it is this tech revolution that we're in the middle of, and this is what happens when it goes wrong, and there's much about it that I don't like.
I agree,
and we haven't discussed it enough. It's just all happened on a, while we've all been looking the other way, all of these changes. I mean, we can't have a sausage roll. Princess Anne, 50 years ago, she had this extraordinary encounter. Andrew will remember it, because presumably you covered it 50 years ago.
Princess Anne was held up in her car with her then-husband, Captain Mark Phillips, by a gun-toting kidnapper.
Who shot a policeman three times.
Who we are talking to on the programme.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, he's
I can't believe you lived to tell the tale.
James Benton. Yeah, amazing. And he's 81 now, and he got the George Cross because he saved the princess. She was heroic. She just flatly refused to get out the back of the car.
So Princess Anne, isn't it?
So Princess Anne, really is. So that's an extraordinary, and it feeds into security, because that changed security for royals forever, and politicians, and of course security, the Princess of Wales security. What a terrible breach, nearly, of her personal health records.
Absolutely not acceptable.
And vaping and causing cancer. Finally, we can talk about vaping.
Is there a link?
Not being this sort of panacea that's saving all the teenagers. They're all addicted horribly.
We spoke to Maria Caulfield about that this morning, and she was quite keen to sort of bat it off, saying it's already illegal for the youngsters to smoke vapes. Yes, but all these bubblegum ones, we don't know what the risks are.
That's a completely complacent attitude.
It is. It is. And parents are furious about the access that children have to vapes.
Yeah. OK, guys, see you from 9:30. Have a good show. Thank you very much indeed. This is the Great British Giveaway we're going to tell you about now. You've still got time to get your share of the spring shopping spree and an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash. Here's how you do it.
Time is ticking on your chance to win the Great British Giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Didn't quite believe it and still can't. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
For another chance to win the vouchers, the treats, and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Stay with us. Still to come, it's almost time for Scottish Baker of the Year. Our reporter Tony McGuire's got the really difficult job of covering this morning. He'll be joining us to tell us more.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Welcome back to Headliners. And Paul, we're going to get straight into Monday's mail for some good old-fashioned, traditional male breastfeeding.
Yeah. To answer the question, what is the latest woke hell, Josh? Row as hospitals say hormone-filled milk from trans women who were born male is just as good for a baby as the real thing. It's possible for men, if they pump themselves full of estrogen, to grow larger breast tissue, and they often do. If
or you just eat lots of burgers.
Exhibit A. And once you've done that, it is actually then possible to express or lactate a liquid. Okay. If to that liquid you then add another load of pills, medication, chemicals, whatever, that lactation juice can be fed to a baby.
We don't really... This is not for the sake of the baby. The baby has no benefits from this whatsoever. The studies are very weak on it. It's a bit worrying because, you know, when hospitals started indulging in homeopathy and having, the NHS had homeopathic hospitals, that was worrying because they're supposed to be a trusted authority. And before saying something like this, there should be an awful lot of study done.
I want to shame this hospital. This is
whether it's necessary.
University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust. That's who it is. And they have written one of the stupidest sentences I have read aloud in the 2 years that I've been privileged to do this show. It says, the term human milk is meant to be neutral and not gender biased.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Oh, my God, we're laughing at you.
I mean, and as someone says here, babies are not props. And that's the scary thing. And when we're not focusing primarily on the health of a baby.
No, but the feeling of a person doing it rather than... It's a bit of an odd way to go, isn't it? So...
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Got some baking news for you today, breaking baking news. It turns out because Greg's bakeries across the land are down due to a number of IT issues. Well, they would be down, except I have a standard order in the morning. So you
got in before the glitch? Are you behind the glitch?
Feel how hot that is. Feel how nice.
Oh, it's still warm.
Still warm. And there we are. So we're ahead of the game, really. And if you are in Scotland, if you are in Glasgow this morning, fear not, because it is time for this year's Scottish Baker of the Year Awards.
Yeah, all the finalists will be judged today across a range of categories. And here to tell us more about best biscuits, scone, celebration cakes, etc., is our Scotland reporter, Tony Maguire. And you're with the previous winner, Tony. Good to see you.
Good morning. Yes, well, indeed, I'm in Mimi's Bakehouse in Edinburgh, and I'm joined here today by Ashley Harley. Now, she's the manager of Mimi's Bakehouse across the many stores here in Edinburgh. And as you mentioned there, she's last year's winner. So who better to talk about this year's awards and what's expected, and whether it's a piece of cake or a bit of a trifle, is going to be her. So Ashley, thank you so much for joining me. Tell me a little bit then about what it meant to the staff here and across your stores to win last year's award for Baker of the Year.
It was such an amazing achievement. We'd actually won Bakery Cafe 8 years in a row, so the big award was in our sights always, and we'd never managed to win. For us, bakery cafes are so important to communities, so to kind of represent that side of it, where it's not just about grab and go, was really important and really exciting.
Fantastic. And of course, the other thing I think people are wanting to know is, you know, what participating in this competition. Scotland is known for, you know, Brand Scotland. What did it tell you about the length and breadth of the country and the talent and the produce that's out there?
It's just so exciting to be part of Scotland, and all the, as you say, the variety from the Highlands, you know, to Dumfries and Galloway, and there's bakeries all across the country that submit. So it's not a geographic, anyone can win, and all the different bakery types, say like wholesale bakeries or retail or cafe bakery, and just to really represent what it means to be a Scottish baker, which is really, really exciting at this current time.
So can you tell us a little bit then about, you're not able to go for the big award this year, but tell us a wee bit about, you know, some advice, I guess, for this year's participants. You know, there's so many categories, but I'm sure you've got some advice there that will help people across all categories.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say go for it. Like, even if you win one of the bronze awards for a product, I know it means a lot to have on your shelf. Customers recognise that, they recognise quality, they understand what that means. So the fact that there's so many different awards to win, I think, is really, really positive. And when it comes to the big one, just go for it, because any bakery, any size can win, and you just have to prove that you're doing your best and working hard. And I think it's a really good opportunity for any bakery of any size to go for it.
Fantastic. And of course, how did last year's big win of the big award really shape your year, again, ahead, you know, the rest of your 23 and into 24?
For us as a bakery cafe, we're in the baking industry, but also the hospitality industry. It's a really tough market just now. I'm sure everyone's aware of restaurants and cafes closing across the country due to various factors, economic factors. So for us, just to have that behind us, just give us really the boost to push forward and have the best year we could, in terms of not being bogged down by those sort of scary stats that are out there and the scary big bills that come in, and try and just focus on the fact that we are, you know, have this positive award and we can push forward and try our best to keep this family legacy business going.
Fantastic. And one very last question. How are your tills working today?
Very well. Yeah, don't go to Greg's, come to Mimi's.
Well, there we have it. We'll be looking over the judging later on today. And of course, May the 10th is when those winners are announced.
Lovely appetite, giving us a lovely appetite this morning.
Yeah.
No smell.
There's nothing like the smell of baking goods, is there?
There is.
If you're trying to sell a house, get that loaf in the oven. That'll sell it for you, no problemo. Let us know who your favourite baker is. If it's Greg's, get in touch, because you'll be affected by that breaking or baking story this morning. Lots of them closed up and down the country. They're having technical issues, apparently, at the till with taking payments. Kind of backbone of Britain, frankly, Greg's, aren't they?
Yeah.
Sort of fuelling everybody as they go about their business. So this could be a big one.
This is the busiest time of the day for them, of course.
McDonald's, Sainsbury's and Tesco's in recent days as well. What is going on?
Personally, I prefer a poached egg and toast, which would be really...
So healthy.
Nice. No, it's not for you. You don't like a poached egg?
I do love a poached egg. Yeah, so runny.
Very good. Breakfast will be back from 6 o'clock tomorrow morning for the rest of your morning. You've got Beverly and Andrew. They're on air from 9:30. Hope you enjoy that. Have a good day, and thanks for your company this morning. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Bit of a drab start for most of us today. Dull and damp. The brightest skies are going to be across Northern Ireland and western Scotland, where we should see some lengthy spells of sunshine. Elsewhere, sunshine in short supply. Generally dry and fine across the southeast. It may cheer up here, but a damp start for eastern Scotland, southern Scotland. The rain will tend to ease here through the day, but it stays pretty dank across northern England, particularly Yorkshire, parts of North Wales. The rain on and off, but fairly light. To the south of that, mostly dry and still pretty mild. 18 Celsius is possible with a bit of sunshine. Some sunnier skies across the northwest. A cooler day here with a fresher feel in the cooler air, but still plenty of sunshine, feeling pleasant enough. The rain and drizzle will trickle away from eastern parts of England through this evening. Much of the UK will become dry by midnight, but then after midnight more rain comes into the far northwest. The wind's picking up here as well. Quite a bit of cloud around. Could see some mist and fog where we keep some clearer skies. Temperatures may in rural spots get close to freezing. On to Thursday then, and generally a dry, fine day for England and Wales. A brighter day, certainly to the east of the Pennines compared to today. Still a fair bit of cloud elsewhere, but some bright or sunny spells in the south. Outbreaks of rain will move in across Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day, so a blustery and fairly wet day here. Rain on and off throughout. Again, fairly mild for most of us, with temperatures generally in the teens.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Talking about Greg's, he's had a vegan sausage roll.
I have. We won't talk about Greg's because IT failure, the tills aren't working.
Yeah.
This follows Sainsbury's, Tesco's, McDonald's. Is something afoot?
Nothing works anymore, does it? Has it affected your breakfast this morning? GBviews at gbnews.com. And of course, the Princess of Wales, this huge security breach. Doctors trying to look at her nose. We're going to be talking about that as well.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews at gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Should we put tobacco-style warnings on ultra-processed foods? Boris Johnson is calling on the government to do this. In his Daily Mail column, the former Prime Minister says that people don't know what they're feeding their families and there's too many extra ingredients. That's why I'm asking, should we put tobacco-style warnings on ultra-processed food? Well, joining me now to discuss, Steve Miller, former presenter of Fat Families, Helena Davidson, campaigner and policy expert at the Vegan Society. Right, so I'm going to start with you. Steve Miller, what do you think?
Oh, I'm applauding Boris today. Good on you, mate. And the reason for that is we know that the research on the warnings on cigarettes, I should say, when those warnings were visual, they worked very well. The second reason on a practical level is that we need to stop looking and listening before we start, grazing and putting things in the trolley. And the third thing is that, these kind of signs, or these warnings, I should say, are kind of hypnotic. They trigger the emotion. So they're much more likely to get people to think and maybe resist
Yeah, so at the Vegan Society, we're broadly in favour of increasing consumer knowledge when it comes to the nutritional value of people's food. But I think it's important to mention that ultra-processed food isn't an issue that's exclusive to vegans. And whilst most meat alternatives will fall into the ultra-processed food category, it largely depends on how we're going to look at how UPFs are going to be assessed, because vegan alternatives that fall under ultra-processed foods, they're actually on average healthier than meat products or ultra-processed foods that contain animal products.
Really?
So I think it depends on how we look at it. We might have to take a closer look at the nutritional profile